Chapter 141, What Happened to Nan Gongyu? He was just about to push the door open, when Zhu Kei's sharp voice came through the thick iron gate. Bai Hu, if you still regard me as a partner considering we grew up together, then step aside. Otherwise, I will be forced to be impolite to you. Today I must slaughter that slut. Bai Hu immediately retorted, you heard Master's words before he lost consciousness, she is Master's personally chosen princess. From now on, she is also our master. Even if I blamed her for causing harm to Master's orders are not something we can ignore. Princess. Harmed Master. He, whose hands were about to slightly press on the door, froze. Bewilderment appearing in her eyes. Zhu Kei was silent for a minute, then when she next spoke, it was in a voice sharp with anger, Bai Hu, don't forget, Master's current condition is due to that slut harming him. If it wasn't for him saving her, how could Master still remain unconscious? I'm not able to, move out of the way. Otherwise, don't blame me if I use poison against you. Zhu Kei, don't cause trouble without a reason. Even if you used poison, just based on your current cultivation base, how could that injure me? Bai Hu's voice was filled with exhaustion and annoyance. What's more, Qing Long has suggested that perhaps she'll be able to cure Master. After all, Qing Long personally witnessed her curing Ouyang Haoshuan's illness. He definitely wouldn't lie about something like this and jeopardize Master's safety. Moreover, have you forgotten what's behind this door? Bai Hu's voice became cold, sharp like the edge of a sword. No one is allowed to enter Master's bedroom, including us 8 trusted subordinates. Whoever enters without permission will be killed, no excuse. The only one who is allowed to enter is Miss Naylan. Don't tell me that you still don't understand what this means. Zhu Kei's expression blanked for a moment, then she suddenly laughed loudly, her voice full of resentment and loathing. You believe that trash that's unable to use spiritual power will be able to cure Master? You don't want to listen to me even though I'm a 5th-rank doctor, and an official member of the Doctors Association? Then could you give me your word that you can definitely cure Master? Bai Hu calmly asked. Zhu Kei hesitated before she responded, then she abruptly raised her voice, if I'm unable to cure Master, don't tell me that immature and inexperienced girl is able to do it. Aren't you and Qing Long being muddle-headed? The two of you believing that slut, do you really want to kill Master? Hexi's complexion had become extremely unsightly listening till here, and not wanting to hear anymore, she pushed the door open, her sharp eyes focusing on Bai Hu. What happened to Nan Gongyu? They said she harmed Nan Gongyu. In the end, what did they mean? Bai Hu and Zhu Kei were shocked, Bai Hu blurting out, Miss Naylan, since when have you been standing behind the door? He is an expert on Gold Core stage, yet he was unaware that there had been an ordinary person listening from behind the door. Hexi didn't care about answering his question, and instead, with a calm expression on her face asked, what happened to Nan Gongyu? Injured too heavily. Bring me to see him immediately. Hexi couldn't describe her mood at this moment. It's like there was a claw incessantly scratching at her heart, painful and irritating. Obviously he is only a stranger she met by chance, but once she heard that he was seriously injured, her good mood disappeared without a trace, leaving only worry and a trace of unfamiliar fear remaining. Fear that something will happen to him. Bai Hu had no time to answer before Zhu Kei screamed, Slut, it was you that harmed Master. If you hadn't seduced Master, his condition wouldn't be so life-threatening. You should just go die, you slut. Chapter 142, Overconfident in front of an expert barely finished speaking, a blade made of wind condensed on her palm, resolutely shooting towards Hexi. This time, her attack used all of her strength as she was no longer holding back. Swearing an oath to herself that she would willingly risk her life and be blamed by Master, she wanted to behead this slut on the spot. Zhu Kei, don't. Bai Hu exclaimed in alarm, a protective barrier immediately condensing on his palm to protect Hexi. However, Zhu Kei was closer to her. Without checking, he knew that it was too late to save her, his complexion couldn't help but changing. The wind blade whistled as it shot towards Hexi with deadly killing intent, sweeping up pebbles and dirt in its wake. He calmly watched the wind blade approach her, neither retreating or avoiding it. Instead, a corner of her mouth slowly lifted into a ridiculing smile. Just when the wind blade was about to reach her, she suddenly raised her hand, the white bone whip clutched in her fist since who knows when. The bone whip lifted slightly, and in a split second a faint golden blue light flickered, striking the wind blade and splitting it in two in the blink of an eye. The wind blade swept past her sides, raising strands of her soft black hair, and finally disappearing without a trace. Standing unharmed in the middle of the gale, she sneered at Zhu Quebec by whose mouth opened wide with shock, astonishment plastered across his face. With white skin resembling snow, eyes like brilliant jewels, and delicate facial features, the girl standing gracefully under the sunshine was just like a fairy that had descended to the mortal world. Her body didn't have any obvious spiritual power, but from her action a moment ago, Bai Hu could clearly sense spiritual power being used. Moreover, Bai Hu had never seen this type of spiritual power before. It wasn't one of the single spiritual root powers of metal, wood, water, fire, or earth, yet neither was it one of the common variations of spiritual roots. How could this be? Did Nalan Heshi have a cultivation base or not? Compared to Bai Hu's astonished expression, Zhu Ke had quickly shaken off her shock. And with her face abruptly distorting, her eyes bloodshot red, she fiercely glared at Heshi as if she wanted to tear her apart. It's you who stole my cultivation base. Slut, it's you who stole my cultivation base, right? Return my cultivation base. Heshi looked at Zhu Ke with her expression as cold as ice, her eyes mocking. Oh, I see, so your cultivation base has dropped from early gold core stage to mid-meridian stage. No wonder that wind blade strike was like a gentle breeze, completely lacking in power. Hearing that caused Zhu Ke to immediately become crazy and hysterically rush towards Heshi. Nalan Heshi, you stole my cultivation base, you must die. Even if I'm only mid-meridian stage, I'll still be able to kill you. I will dismember your body into 1,000 pieces. As Zhu Ke shouted, she withdrew one of her handmade poison powders, fiercely tossing it at Heshi. One must know that this poison powder was made when she was still a gold core stage martial artist, so even a martial artist of the same rank would be somewhat fearful to come into contact with it. While Nalan Heshi was someone who had only recently advanced from the qi refining stage, so how would she be able to withstand it? Once this poison powder touched a person's body, their skin will itch as it rots, inch by inch, not stopping until they finally turn into a stinking corpse, their bones dried up and their flesh like liquid. Nalan Heshi, you harmed me, so if I can't dismember your body, I will instead break your bones and scatter the ashes of your corpse. Until then, I cannot avenge the hatred in my heart. As the powder spread, Heshi sniffed the air and could smell a particular stench. A corner of her mouth lifted into a cold smile, and sneering, she said, unexpectedly, you dare use poison in front of your ancestor. You're practically playing with an axe at the doorway of Lu Ban's house. 1. Overestimating your capabilities like this. 1. It is said that Lu Ban, influenced by the fact that the leaves of Kogon grass are shaped like the teeth of a saw, invented the saw, and that he constructed a bird out of bamboo strips that could fly in the air for 3 days and 3 nights without falling. Lu Ban had a number of inventions, which is the reason why he is worshipped by Chinese people as the founder of carpentry as a trade. To play with an axe at the doorway to Lu Ban's house is, of course, indicative of not knowing one's own limitation. Chapter 143, Princess. What rubbish is this? Barely pausing after speaking, Heshi's hand was already in motion as she tossed out a handful of silver poison at Zhu Ke's approaching poison powder. What happened next caused the people present to become stunned. The blackish-gray poison powder and the silver powder were like nemesis meeting midair. When they collided, it was like time stopped as they both hovered in the sky, forming an ash-gray barrier that caused everyone's hair to stand on end. Subsequently, Heshi lightly brandished the bone whip in her hand and strong spiritual power erupted, knocking aside the poison barrier. The mixed poisons then, without pause, flew straight towards Zhu Quebec. Ah! Zhu Ke's eyes opened wide with fright, horror expressed on her face. When she threw the poison powder, she had been utterly confident that He would die, so unfortunately, she hadn't made any defense preparations. So when the poisons headed towards her, she was completely caught off guard. The tip of her nose smelled a familiar stench, causing Zhu Kei's body to shake all over and despair to surge within her heart. The next moment, a protective barrier appeared in front of Zhu Kei, in a flash obstructing the poisons from reaching her. The poison powder and the silver powder then gently fluttered to the ground. After barely touching the ground, the silver powder began to evaporate, the poison powder soon following and also disappearing without a trace. However, what is most horrifying of all, is that the ground where the silver powder landed, there were burnt holes remaining. The is a so-called divine medical poison. After committing a crime, it will naturally evaporate and disappear without a trace, not even a hair will remain. Compared to Zhu Kei's handmade poison, this melting bone silver powder was 1,000 times more formidable. Previously, He didn't have any spiritual power, so she had no way to infuse the melted bone poison into a martial artist's body, but it will be different from now on. She still has many hideous poisons in her hands waiting to be improved, so if any people dared to provoke her, she absolutely wouldn't show mercy. Bai Hu saw the complete evaporation, the corroded ground due to the silver powder, and horror bubbled forth in his heart. Although these poisons didn't injure him, if they were used against an ordinary low-level martial artist, it would be absolutely fatal. In just a few days, Miss Nalan's strength has increased to such a degree, no wonder to her, Master is so. As he raised his head, his eyes that looked towards He were filled with fear and respect. Yet in the end, Zhu Kei is their comrade, someone they grew up with. Princess, Zhu Kei is presumptuous and intended to attack Princess, she ought to be punished. But even if she's guilty she shouldn't die, please Princess, spare her life. Princess. He's brows wrinkled, what sort of name is this? Just as she was about to open her mouth and ask, Zhu Kei who was standing behind Bai Hu once again went mad, wanting to rush towards He. You think with just your little cultivation base that you can really compete with me? Before I was only momentarily tricked by you, this time I must kill. Zhu Kei had barely finished her threat, when Bai Hu lifted his hand, and released a powerful burst of spiritual pressure towards her. Zhu Kei's complexion changed, and quivering all over, she spat out a mouthful of blood with a pft. In disbelief, she raised her head and stared at Bai Hu. You go so far as to injure me for an unknown slut, good. Bai Hu, you saw that I was harmed by this woman and lost my cultivation base, so now you want to push me further into a pit of despair too. Chapter 144, A Life Close to Death. At this moment, the annoyance is clear on Bai Hu's face as he looked at Zhu Kei, the light in his eyes as cold as ice. Zhu Kei, you've crossed the line, I will report your conduct and deeds of today to Master. Wait until Master wakes up, you should think about how you'll explain this. Finished speaking, he no longer paid attention to Zhu Kei, instead looking towards He. Princess, Qing Long requested that I immediately bring you to see Master once you were awake. If you would follow me? He frowned, her worry for Nangongyu her main focus. How's Nangongyu now? Master fell into a coma late last night, and up until now there has been no signs he would awaken. Every doctor in the manor, including Zhu Kei, has examined him. But as of yet we've been completely unable to do anything for him, we're currently helpless. He promptly said, bring me to him. Compared to Nangongyu's safety, settling accounts with Zhu Kei and caring about being called princess were insignificant worries. Moreover, when she thought of using melting bone poison to kill Zhu Kei, she now realized it would be too cheap a death for her. If Zhu Kei tried to provoke her again, she has many amusing games prepared, all waiting to play with her till the end. Bai Hu quickly walked ahead, leading the way. When he passed by Zhu Kei, his cold gaze noticed the resentment on her face, so he just helplessly shook his head. All of Nangongyu's subordinates were aware of Zhu Kei's feelings towards Master, they had even openly or secretly advised her. However, for her own selfish desires, she had disregarded Master's orders. This Zhu Kei, it seems like she wouldn't be staying long in Hell King Manor. There was quite a distance to the place where Nangong Yu cultivates, and the whole way there, He kept trying to remember what happened last night. Yet no matter how hard she tried, she has no impressions of what had occurred. Sneaking a glance at Bai Hu from the side, she saw that his face was taut due to his displeasure. With his icy expression, he no longer resembled the enthusiastic gossiper she had come to know at her courtyard. She could clearly sense that his discontent and resentment was aimed at her, because it was because of her that Nangong Yu was unconscious. Was it Nangong Yu who saved me yesterday? Bai Hu's footsteps slightly paused, a corner of his mouth rising in a faint curve. Yes, Princess. All of them had personally seen Heshi's dying appearance yesterday. If Master hadn't done everything he could to save her, it's likely that Heshi wouldn't have been able to survive, let alone have her strength rise to such a degree. However, because of her, Master is now in a coma, his life close to death. This resulted in Bai Hu unable to do anything but hate Heshi. If she didn't exist, Master surely would have been able to withstand his illness like previously, without it being so life-threatening this time. Princess again. Heshi frowned. I'm not your princess. Bai Hu snorted, his tone formal and distant. I apologize, but this is Master's command. Even if we're unwilling, we can only obey. Since Master said that you are to be called princess, then you are to be called princess. To hell with it. Nangong Yu said that I'm to be called princess, so I'm called princess. Does no one ask her opinion? Furthermore, why on earth has Nangong Yu commanded his subordinates to call her princess? Has his brain short-circuited? But before Heshi could refute Bai Hu, they had already arrived at Nangong Yu's recuperation room, so she could only quickly focus on the task at hand. Standing in front of Nangong Yu's room there was a crowd of people that included Qing Long, as well as 3 noticeable men. Next to Qing Long, there is a tall and thin man dressed in black, his eyes bright and sharp, with a temperament somewhat similar to Qing Long. Heshi had already met 3 of Nangong Yu's personal bodyguards and knew they were named after the 4 divine beasts, Qing Long, Bai Hu, and Zhu Ke, so then this is probably Xian Wu. Chapter 145, Cold Poison. Standing beside Xian Wu is a young man dressed in a moon-white brocade robe, his features bright and handsome, while his expression resembled an ice sculpture. His imposing manner gave off a warning, keeping strangers from coming close. Heshi's intuition faintly told her that this person is more powerful than Qing Long. His temper seemed to be very cold and indifferent, yet she had no idea who he is. When her gaze fell on the third person, she startled slightly. She has actually met this person before, yet he didn't leave a deep impression. He was the auctioneer at Gluttonous House, Wu Yu. Wu Yu noticed Heshi's surprise as she looked at him, a corner of his mouth raising into a smile. Serene eyes with hidden depths made it impossible for people to guess what he is thinking. Qing Long watched Heshi arrive, and without greeting her he immediately said, "You, come with me." In a flash, the door to the room was pushed open and Heshi followed him in. After barely entering the room, her senses were assaulted by a blast of heat. Fine beads of sweat started to form on her forehead, and furrowing her eyebrows, she quickly used a small amount of water's spiritual power to resist the heat. Only then was she able to feel comfortable. Qing Long saw Heshi's body produce pure spiritual power, and his eyes slightly revealed his astonishment as he explained, "The cold poison in Master's body has begun to enter his heart. We have tried everything we could think of to suppress it, but so far it's only helped a little." Walking around a corner, they came upon a large bed. Smoke filled the room, raising the temperature, and lying on the bed with the smoke wafting around him, is Nangong Yu. At her first glance of Nangong Yu, Heshi's eyes suddenly narrowed. The man on the bed is only wearing a white silk robe, and with his hair undone, eyes tightly closed, his handsome appearance resembled a jade sculpture from afar. The inside of the room is clearly burning hot, yet his face didn't have the slightest trace of color. Instead, his white complexion seemed to be frozen and transparent. Heshi had never seen Nangong Yu like this before. In her impressions of him, Nangong Yu is always elegant, filled with demonic charm, a pervert, and completely ostentatious. But the Nangong Yu of this moment looks so fragile, as if he could break with just one touch. Without waiting for Qing Long to present her, He quickly stepped forward and grabbed Nan Gongyu's wrist. So cold. He's hand shivered slightly. She is obviously holding a person's wrist, but it felt like she was holding a piece of jade just removed from the freezer. And this kind of cold, as she is touching it, she had the illusion it was permeating into her bones. As she focused, and using her spiritual power to slowly penetrate his pulse, she began to examine his body. After maintaining this position for longer than it took to burn a stick of incense, her eyebrows started wrinkling tighter and tighter. Qing Long's expression as he watched her was anxious, like he was slowly being burnt. Several times he wanted to interrupt He and inquire about his master's condition, but he was afraid that disturbing her treatment would be harmful to his master. Just when his patience had almost reached his limit, He finally released her hand. Yet the wrinkle between her eyebrows still didn't loosen. Qing Long quickly asked, "How's master? Can he be cured?" If even this genius Dr. Shiyu that cured Ouyang Haoshuan is helpless, then they would have no other choice but to request help from an elder from the Doctors Association, and that would be Zhu Kei's master. But if this were to happen, then master's situation would be known by other people, and at that time, Hell King Manor would no longer be able to maintain its transcendent position. This might also lead to master attracting a fatal disaster. Thinking about this, Qing Long's hand that was gripping his sword firmly, tightened. His eyes gazing at He unconsciously filling with a trace of hope. Chapter 146, Treatment Plan. He pondered for a moment, then slowly said, "Nan Gongyu's illness, how old was he when this began to attack?" Qing Long promptly replied, "This illness has accompanied master since he began to successfully cultivate spiritual power, and he became able to draw vital energy into his body. Every 7th day, of the 7th month, it will flare up, attacking the blood throughout his body and causing it to freeze, while his meridians become stiff and frail. This situation lasts for 3 days, and only then does it slowly improve, so that by the 5th day, master will be completely restored like usual." Hearing what Qing Long said, He's face slightly revealed her surprise. Turning her head, she looked all around the room, then said, "Every year when Nan Gongyu's illness flares, does he use a strong yang object to suppress the cold poison in his body?" She pointed at the steam rising and curling out from a high-quality fire crystal stone. "Not this thing or yuan yang fruit, these aren't enough by far to suppress the cold poison in his body." "How did you know?" Qing Long blurted out, his face full of surprise as an enthusiastic light burst in his eyes. "Yes, every year when it nears the 7th month, master will enter the flame cave for seclusion. Only the yang from the flame cave is able to suppress the cold energy in master's body." Qing Long was just about to explain why Nan Gongyu hadn't yet entered the flame cave, but noticed He nodding, the realization on her face as she said, "I've heard about the flame cave. Located in the center of the cave, there is heavenly yang fire. It is said that it's able to entirely burn all living things on the world. If it's the flame cave, then it would indeed be possible to suppress Nan Gongyu's cold poison." Of course, this wasn't what she had heard, rather, she knew all this from before, when she had read the All Living Things record. But, as she frowned, her expression slowly becoming complex as she looked at Nan Gongyu on the bed, "The fire element in the flame cave is violent and extreme, even to Nan Gongyu's body. After entering for so long the body will start to suffer from irreversible damage. Therefore, for him to enter the flame cave, it is necessary his body is in peak condition, or else he would be unable to bear the intense yang fire. But in order to save me this guy, in order to save her, did he go so far because he didn't treasure his life? However, they're both just strangers coming together by chance, so why? What did he really want?" The expressions on her face continuously changed between guilt and gratefulness, while there was even one of heartache. When she started feeling doubt, for a moment she even forgot to maintain the water's spiritual power, causing her to nearly be unable to stand the impact from the heat wave. Qing Long's face revealed his rapture. His eyes no longer glared at He with condemnation and doubt, rather, they were full of hope. He repeatedly nodded as he said, "What Princess said is true. Every year near the 7th month, master will enter seclusion, adjusting his cultivation base and strength to be the best they can be. Once the 7th day arrives, he withdraws to the flame cave. Outsiders think it's for seclusion, but just as Princess said, every time Master leaves the flame cave, the injuries to his meridians and dantian increase. Each year we all worry for Master, wondering if he'll be able to hold on or not. Pausing for a while, he then slowed his voice and asked in a whisper, Princess, do you have a treatment method? He didn't answer. Instead, she lightly tapped the bed with her finger as she pondered. After a long while, she frowned and said, for now, I'm unable to think of a method to solve the root of the problem, but I have a plan to temporarily alleviate his illness. We just need to make it like he's cultivating in the flame cave to get him through this difficult time. But this plan is only an idea. I've never implemented it on other patients, and my treatment plan is completely different of that from your doctor, so I'll leave it up to you all to decide if you're willing to follow it or not. Chapter 147, I will definitely cure you. Qinglong promptly asked, may I ask Princess to describe the details of the treatment plan? He nodded, then listed out a series of herb names, jade marrow mushroom, 7 red cloud lotus, heavenly spirit fruit, congeal grass. You only need to find these herbs, that would do. Qinglong's face immediately showed doubt when he heard what was said. Congeal grass has an extremely strong cold attribute. If it's taken alone, taking too much can cause the cold poison to flare in an ordinary martial artist and they would lose their life. Currently Master's cold poison has flared up. How can you? She lifted her eyes, her gaze indifferent as she looked at him and lightly laughed. That said, my treatment plan is different compared to other doctors, so the medicinal ingredients I use will also be different. If you don't have any confidence in it, you may refuse to employ it. Qinglong startled, momentarily hesitant as he requested, please allow this subordinate to discuss this with the others. He nodded, you had best decide as soon as possible though, with Nangong Yu's condition it cannot be delayed. In another 6 hours, I can't be certain that I'll be able to save his life. With anxiousness on his face, Qinglong's figure flashed as he instantly disappeared from the room. Now, only Nangong Yu and He remained in the room resembling a sauna. He quietly looked at the unconscious Nangong Yu, and after a moment of hesitation, she couldn't help but extend her hand, softly caressing his face. Nangong Yu's slender eyebrows arched gracefully towards his temples, while the bridge of his nose is high and straight. He has thin and finely shaped lips, and long eyelashes that gently fluttered, casting faint silhouettes against his cheeks. His skin is snow-white, almost transparent, and under his thin skin it is almost possible to see faint blue-green veins, his aura fragile yet beautiful. He will always remember that when those ink-black eyes were open, they looked at all lands under heaven with arrogance, displaying a willfulness to all. How they burned like fire, with serene and hidden depths. Nangong Yu, the Coldine object, was it your own blood? She softly whispered in his ear, you and I obviously only met by chance, so why do you go to such lengths for me? From when she was a child till now, if anyone around her was good to her, it was in order to take advantage of her. Squeezing her for everything she was worth. So much so that finally, the partner who had braved fire and water with her, who had risked life and limb with her countless times, Leng Ye, betrayed her. Such experiences had caused He unable to believe anyone, unable to open her heart and accept anyone. However, Nangong Yu's conduct and deeds were making her originally sealed heart crack. On one hand, she wants to believe him, while on the other hand, she is afraid she is being taken advantage of. In any case, I will definitely cure you. He murmured, even if it was just you being kind, I will definitely cure your illness completely. In fact, Nangong Yu's current condition isn't that severe, so she is utterly certain that she can use ordinary prescriptions to suppress what ails him. Unfortunately, what made He afraid, is that she had used countless methods to check Nangong Yu's body, but she still couldn't find the source of the cold energy within him. Obviously there is no source, and also no sign of poison, but with the passage of time his body is gradually becoming colder, so much so that even his dantian is slowly showing signs of freezing. This caused He to feel puzzled. Apparently she wouldn't be able to find the cause of Nangong Yu's illness in such a short amount of time, so currently the only thing to do is alleviate his symptoms, putting the discussion on hold until later and helping him pass this stage first. Qing Long went outside to inform Wu Xian and the others the details of Heshi's diagnoses and her proposed treatment plan. Chapter 148, Sacrificing Your Lives. As he finished speaking, Zhu Ke, who had just rushed over, let out a sharp protest. Qing Long, is there something wrong with your head? Een congeal grass is a cold een plant. That slut wants to use een congeal grass and deliberately harm Master's life, yet you believe her? Zhu Ke's voice became sluggish, then she abruptly shouted loudly, I can't cure Master's illness, but my teacher can. She's a third-generation elder of the Doctors' Association, any incurable disease will completely recover by her hands. As long as we invite my teacher to come here, she will certainly be able to cure Master. As Zhu Ke's voice faded, Wu Xian raised his hand, and a sudden attack of strong wind knocked her to the ground. Zhu Ke cut a sorry figure as she tumbled about, a trickle of blood flowing from a corner of her mouth. Her complexion was deathly pale as she glared at the people around her, her cold eyes containing fierce anger and hatred. Wu Xian coldly snorted, his sword-like gaze thrust towards her. Zhu Ke, don't forget our oath. Anyone who leaks Master's condition is committing an act of betrayal, suffering heaven's punishment. Even if the person you leaked it to is your teacher, it's still the same. Zhu Ke's body trembled under the force of Wu Xian's power. When she remembered that she was now only so weak because of that slut Nalan Heshi, the resentment in her heart fiercely blazed, burning ever more vigorously. You're all a group of idiots. To actually be played with by an unknown woman and run around in circles, it's clear that my teacher's ability is the one thing that will most likely be able to make Master recover, and yet none of you believe in me or my teacher, instead believing in that slut. Zhu Ke sneered as she laughed loudly, her face distorting with a sinister smile. Coupled with the scars on her face, it looked terrible and ugly. In this case, this slut can't cure Master's illness, no. Instead, this slut wants to make Master take een congeal grass, so she clearly wants to kill Master. If Master suffers a mishap because of your decision, then you will all be at fault. You will all have to apologize by sacrificing your lives for your offenses. Qing Long and the others looked at each other in dismay, their expressions revealing their indecision. After all, if Heshi harbored malicious intentions, it's likely her treatment will harm Nangong Yu's life, but if they didn't use Heshi's treatment plan, they were still helpless. Did they really need to request help from the Doctors' Association? That would be introducing a potential source of future trouble, and if Master was awake, he definitely wouldn't approve of this decision. In the end, what should they do? You said that if I can't cure Nangong Yu, they must sacrifice their lives, so then if I can cure him? Suddenly, a clear and distinct woman's voice sounded from inside the door, causing everyone to immediately look towards the direction the voice came from. Before their eyes, Heshi, disguised as a youth, unhurriedly walked out from inside the room. Although she is wearing men's clothes, without anything else to disguise her appearance, all it took was one glance for everyone to be able to see that she is clearly a woman. Her exquisite, snow-white skin glistened under the sunshine, and her hair is moist due to perspiration, causing some of it to stick to her cheeks and border her picturesque features. With her bright eyes and white teeth, it made her resemble a fairy born amongst the dawn mist, so beautiful that it stunned and dazzled everyone. Everyone's heart became distracted as they looked at her, secretly thinking, no wonder the always cold-hearted and emotionless Master treats Miss Nalan differently compared to anyone else. Chapter 149, Make a Bet. But when Zhu Ke saw Heshi looking this way, she could only feel the jealousy in her heart burning. Her glaring eyes resembled a dead fish's eyes as they protruded out, and as she fiercely focused on Heshi, the scars on her face kept trembling. Sucking in a deep breath, she spoke in a stern voice, Nalan Heshi, I haven't asked what vicious thoughts you have in mind, but since Master's cold poison has flared up and you want to use een congeal grass on him, you clearly want to harm Master's life. Don't think your flowery words that can deceive Qing Long and the others can fool me. I'm a 5th-rank doctor acknowledged by the Doctors' Association. With just your 3-legged cat's ability, you dare to say that you're more powerful than me. Heshi sneered, her gaze as she looked at Zhu Ke full of contempt and disdain. Such big talk, Zhu Quebec. You should wait until you've healed the scars on your face before you say that to me again. The expression on Zhu Kei's face abruptly stiffened, and she subconsciously covered her face with a hand. From the moment she saw Master carrying this slut back, she had forgotten everything else, her mind muddled by her burning jealousy. For a while she didn't have the time to care about the veil on her face falling off, but now, thinking of other people seeing her ugly appearance, fear started to appear in her eyes. For a woman like Zhu Kei who wished to appear beautiful to everyone, her appearance meant everything to her. She especially feared appearing so ugly like this in front of Master. Zhu Kei's features twisted, the expression in her eyes full of hostility as she looked at He. Slut, you haven't yet realized that the scar on your face is growing bigger and turning blacker? He indifferently interrupted her, to tell you the truth. One day that scar will spread to cover your whole face, emitting an unpleasant smell. It must feel wonderful, but aren't you a fifth-rank doctor? I believe that you will certainly be able to cure it. Zhu Kei's eyes suddenly widened with her alarm, incredulousness filling her face. No. She totally didn't believe He's words. There is no such poison in this world, but the way this slut said it, as if she was making a solemn vow, what if by chance it was true? He ignored Zhu Kei's panic, instead restraining her expression as she said, let's return back to the point, about how I can use congeal grass and the other medicines I mentioned, making Nangong Yu awaken and helping him get through his illness this time. Impossible. Zhu Kei blurted out, congeal grass is extremely cold, it will only increase Master's symptoms. How could cure you Master's illness? Oh, then since you don't believe me, how about we make a bet? He gently played with the jade ornament hanging at her waist, smirking as she said, if I can't awaken Nangong Yu, I'll accept your punishment. Zhu Kei promptly raised her voice and roared, if you can't cure Master, I shall cut your face and use poison to corrode the skin all over your body. A sword-like coldness flashed in He's eyes, and she slowly said, I have no hesitations to agreeing, but, what if I cure Nangong Yu? Zhu Kei blanked for a moment, then sneered as she coldly laughed, using these medicines you've listed you will absolutely be unable to awaken Master, you're just raving like a lunatic. If you're truly able to cure Master, I will discard my cultivation base and henceforth no longer be a doctor. Will this do? He faintly smiled, and no longer paying attention to Zhu Kei, she turned around and looked at Qing Long, immediately prepare the medicines I've asked for. Chapter 150, Dried Up Spiritual Plants. Qing Long looked hesitant, before he frowned and said, Princess, there is something this subordinate forgot to tell you, but about preparing those herbs, there may be some difficulties. Ah. He raised her eyebrows, revealing her surprise. Those medicines were just common spiritual plants, only the congeal grass is a fourth-grade herb. Although it's considered precious, based on the Hell King Manor's wealth and influence, how could they not get it? Qing Long glanced at her with a complex expression in his eyes. Yesterday and last night, it appears that all the spiritual plants in the city were sucked dry, causing them to wither and die. Even the spiritual plants stored in jade boxes were not spared, especially all those stalks of congeal grass. Although it's only a fourth-grade spiritual plant, it belonged to a rare species, so we really don't know where to find it. She startled, suddenly recalling that along the way when she came here, all the places she passed were indeed without any green, so actually, all the spiritual plants are dead. Seeing He frown, Zhu Kei at once laughed loudly, so as it turns out, you knew that all the spiritual plants had withered, and were only trying to play me with this bet. You knew your method was unachievable, so you deliberately made a show of being earnest, as if you were actually taking things seriously. Slut, can you not be so shameless? Don't think that just because all the spiritual plants have withered that you don't have to fulfill our bet, I will still destroy your face. Qing Long and the others frowned as they listened, feeling that Zhu Kei has already gone insane. In order to settle her grudge with He, she was even ignoring Master's safety. Bai Hu suddenly spoke, Zhu Kei, doesn't your teacher have a portable medicine garden? That's a heaven and earth treasure, so the herbs inside were surely spared of having their spiritual energy sucked away. You should quickly ask her for several kinds of herbs, perhaps it's not too late. For what reason? Zhu Ke screamed, and then continued hysterically, "Why should I help this slut? If we want to cure master, we only need to invite my teacher to come. Even if I'm dead, I will still refuse to help this slut." After hearing Zhu Ke's rant, Qing Long, Wu Xian, and the others glared at her with barely contained fury. Regardless of the bet's result between her and Nalan Heshi, this type of Zhu Ke absolutely mustn't stay in Hell King Manor. Once master awakens, we'll see how he punishes her. Heshi, however, looked calmly at Qing Long, saying, "Take me to see the manor's medicine garden." Qing Long startled, astonishment on his face, "Princess, the spiritual plants in the medicine garden have all died, not even a single stalk remains." Heshi shallowly laughed, then slowly said, "What I want to see are the dead spiritual plants." In this world, dead spiritual plants didn't have any value. This is why they used jade boxes to pack spiritual plants for business transactions, because once a spiritual plant withers, its spiritual energy disappears. If you try to refine pills with them, they wouldn't be able to mix with the other ingredients or withstand the heat needed to temper the pills, so they naturally didn't have any effect. But Heshi is different, she wanted those spiritual plants to use like traditional Chinese medicines. For the so-called traditional Chinese medicine, in order for long-term preservation, it can be preserved through the processing of drying. If it's withered, it doesn't affect the effectiveness of the medicines at all. Zhu Ke eagerly wished to see Heshi's humiliation once she failed. She had better be aware. The medicine garden in Hell King Manor is very large. Moreover, because there was a spiritual formation placed around it, the spiritual energy had been extremely rich. But at this moment, the field is barren, all the plants had withered and become ashes. The crystal stones strategically placed for the spiritual formation had also lost their spiritual energy, turning into dust. Heshi sighed, how could this be? As she met Qing Long's conflicted gaze, he said, "Princess, do you really not remember what happened last night?" Chapter 151, I will not be refining. Heshi stared blankly, unresponsive to Qing Long's words, but still heard him when he spoke once more. Last night after Master helped heal Princess' body abruptly formed a huge vortex. It practically absorbed all the spiritual energy in Yanjing City. These spiritual plants died last night because of the vortex. Heshi opened her eyes wide and examined the field of dead spiritual plants. Looking back at Qing Long again, her heart was at first astonished, but then she suddenly understood. Dandan, that's right. All of this must have been done by Dandan. That big food eater must have absorbed all of the plant's spiritual energy. Old man Shumi had previously said that for Dandan to be able to hatch, it needed an extremely large amount of spiritual energy. At the time, she had worried about how to feed this spoiled spirit pet till it was satisfied, and was concerned that it wouldn't be full until she was poor. She had guessed that Dandan would need a lot of spiritual energy to hatch, but she never would have expected that it would need this much spiritual energy. However, this is a city full of spiritual energy, and this slow egg absorbed it all yet still dared to say it's hungry to her. It was simply trying to defraud its mother. Heshi ruminated for a while, then decided to no longer care about this problem. After all the spiritual energy throughout the city had already been absorbed. It wasn't as if that little guy would still able to squeeze back into the egg, or spit out the spiritual energy anyway. Moreover, Dandan is her spirit pet, for it to be able to hatch, she is already very happy. As for the rest, who cares? Heshi squatted down, and plucking a spiritual herb's withered stalk, she brought it to the tip of her nose and sniffed it. After tearing off a little of it, she placed it into her mouth to chew and taste it. Not bad. Although there is completely no spiritual energy, the herb had only lost half of its medicinal effect. Compared to using it for special techniques, using it to concoct traditional Chinese medicines would be perfect. Heshi stood up and pointed at the withered spiritual plants while speaking, "Collect the several spiritual plants that I listed before." Qing Long became puzzled, "Princess, do you intend to use these for refining?" Once these common herbs without spiritual energy touch a fire used for refining, they will disintegrate into ashes, then disperse in a puff of smoke. He spread out her hands. As I said, I'm not an ordinary doctor, so I will not be using them for refining. Not using them for refining. So how is she going to treat Master's illness? At this moment, Qinglong couldn't help but look at her with suspicion. This Miss Nalan wouldn't really act like Zhu Ke had said, right? Just coming by to show off and swindle them. But recalling the miracles performed on Ouyang Haoshuan's body, he pushed down the doubt in his heart, and began collecting the dead spiritual plants one by one. After returning to the bedroom where Nan Gongyu was residing, she once again passed down a series of instructions. She wanted them to prepare a pot, stove and fire, and even told Qinglong to find a huge wooden tub. As Zhu Ke watched from the side, a sneer was plastered across her face as she laughed loudly. I've studied medicine for over 10 years and have followed my teacher to see countless patients, but I've never seen a medical treatment such as this. Nalan Heshi, you are clearly trying to exhaust your limited abilities since you know you will lose, right? Heshi was doing her job, focusing on crushing the medicine ingredients in accordance with strict measurements. When she heard what was said, she raised her head to glance at Zhu Ke, disdainfully laughing. No culture is terrible. Instead, the most terrible thing is when someone has no culture, yet still insists on running around, making an exhibition of themselves. At the time your father and mother gave birth to you, did they not tell you that your eyes grow on the top of your head, since you're a toad? PFFTT. Bai Hu, who was standing nearby, overhead, and couldn't bear it anymore, laughing loudly. As he looked at Zhu Ke's twisted and insane appearance, he actually felt like gloating. He had absolutely no sympathy for her. Zhu Ke screamed, wanting to rush forwards and destroy Heshi's face. That woman dared to say that she, Zhu Ke, is a toad who wants to eat swan flesh. How dare that slut mock her? However, she had barely reached Heshi, when she suddenly sensed a huge wave of spiritual power head towards her. She felt a sharp burst of pain in her abdomen, and then her body abruptly resembled a kite with its string snapped as it flew away, before she then landed severely on the ground. Chapter 152, Remove Nan Gongyu's clothes. The one who attacked her is the silent and stone-faced Wu Xian, who had quietly been standing to the side. The room's door closed in front of her with a bang. No matter how much she pounded on the door to be let back into the room, no one opened the door for her. Heshi had readied all the herbs, and began to use the pot to boil them like traditional Chinese medicine. For a while she hesitated, then secretly added spiritual spring water from the 9th secluded spirit spring into the pot. She even placed the silver needles she used for medical purposes into the pot with the medicine, then left it all to boil together. After an hour, the traditional Chinese medicine had successfully boiled, and the entire room was filled with the strong smell of medicine. The smell of this medicine is different from the smell of medicines normally used in Miluo continent. There is no sense of spiritual power, nor an atmosphere of vegetation. On the contrary, it only carried a strong bitter smell. Looking at the big pot of dense, dark soup, Qinglong's and the others' expressions turned somewhat fearful. Bai Hu couldn't help but murmur, "Princess, the thing in this pot, you won't give it to Master to drink, right? If Master drank the thing in this pot, will he really be able to survive?" Heshi ignored him and poured the boiled decoction of medicine into the tub. The tub had been filled with hot water, and after more thought, Heshi secretly added more spiritual spring water before giving a command, "Remove Nan Gongyu's clothes and place him in the tub." Qinglong and others looked at each other in dismay. Ambiguous expressions on all of their faces. From the beginning, Miss Nalan hadn't admitted that she is a princess, continually denying an intimate relationship between herself and Master. How is it proper for an unmarried girl to see Master without any clothes? What they didn't know though, was that once Heshi entered the role of medical practitioner, she will completely forget her identity and gender. Whether is it a man or woman, wearing clothes or naked, in her eyes they are all the same. Qinglong quickly put Nan Gongyu into the tub, the black liquid rising up to cover Nan Gongyu's chest. The moment the medicine touched Nan Gongyu's body, it started to slightly boil. It was at this moment that Heshi's expression became serious. In fact, she knew that it was a risk to use congeal grass, as it is an extremely cold plant. But the cold energy in Nangongyu's body is too strong, so if she were to purposely use all the herbs with a yang property, switching his temperature from extreme cold to extreme heat, it would seriously damage his body. It would be like the injuries he gets from the flame cave. So although his cold poison would be temporarily cured, in the long run it'll be even more damaging to his meridians. Therefore, Heshi had come up with the idea of using congeal grass as a guide, matching it with the other herbs to temporarily ease his illness. But congeal grass is still an extremely cold plant after all, so once it entered Nangongyu's body, mixing with his cold poison, it will immediately make Nangongyu's illness worse, even life-threatening. The only way to help prevent this is if she uses her silver needles. Before the congeal grass's cold essence can enter his arteries, traveling to his heart, she would unblock every one of his major acupuncture points, giving the other ingredients in the medicine a chance to advance. With this, they would be able to have an effect, neutralizing the congeal grass. And so, during this process, no one was allowed to disturb her. Qing Long and the others quietly left, guarding the room from outside. Yet the always silent Wu Xian couldn't help but frown. This Miss Nalan, if I remember correctly, she is a concubine's daughter and was abandoned by the Nalan family. With a cowardly disposition, she wouldn't complain even though she was forced to suffer bullying and humiliation. On top of that, she didn't even have a cultivation base. How can her true appearance and the rumors about her be so different? Before Qing Long could reply, Wu Yu clicked his tongue twice and laughed. If this little girl is considered cowardly, then there are no brave women in this world. Someone sold her to Gluttonous House to be an auction product, but when she opened her eyes, she cleanly killed all the guests in the room. Master and I personally witnessed it with our own eyes. Chapter 153, Would you like to touch something else? Wu Xian raised his brows, doubt written on his face. So are you saying that the rumors can't be trusted? Qing Long promptly responded, I personally witnessed her treatment of Ouyang Haoshuan. Her method was quite strange. You know that Ouyang Haoshuan had been crippled for more than a year with his meridians fractured, and seeing him in person, it was just like he was a person preparing to enter the gates of hell. Yet unexpectedly, because of her strange method, she was able to save him. Let alone walking like normal, even his cultivation base has been restored to normal. This matter has created a stir throughout Yanjing City, and up until now, there are still many groups of people searching for her. If Master hadn't helped to obstruct them, perhaps the genius Dr. Shi Yu would have been fought over by all the powerful parties long ago. Several people heard what Qing Long said, their faces showing hope and admiration. Such an amazing woman, maybe she really can cure Master's illness. And so Heshi, the one that they were talking about, was currently in the room, her treatment reaching a critical moment. The speed of her hands was very fast. With only a vague shadow visible, the silver needles in her fingertips flickered as she concentrated on continuously roaming Nangongyu's body. In order to have precise control over the effect of each acupuncture point, every needle that was inserted and removed used her spiritual power. As she carefully placed the set of needles in his body, Heshi's own body was already drenched in sweat, a faint pink flush appearing on her face. She sighed and wiped the sweat on her forehead, moving to sit down by the bedside. At this time the medicinal water in the tub had stopped boiling. It was now calmly rippling around Nangongyu's body, and his body that was originally freezing, similar to an ice cube, had now gradually risen in temperature. As Heshi's gaze slowly traveled down from Nangongyu's slightly flushed face, stopping on his chest, her face suddenly reddened. It was until this moment that she finally realized she had been examining Nangongyu's naked body for a while now. Not only that, she had also practically touched every inch of skin on his upper body. Nangongyu was currently unconscious, he simply sat leaning against the edge of the tub quietly. Seeing Nangongyu like this, she slowly began to be lost in thought. Indeed, he really is an evildoer that could make a person's heart pound. His long hair was draped like a waterfall over his shoulders, like smooth black silk, while his pale skin was becoming a faint honey color due to the warmth. When he was wearing clothes he seemed to have a slender figure, yet now that he was naked she could see that he is covered with delicately defined muscles, especially that six-pack. If they were in the time of her past life, without a doubt, he could make all the women salivate. Of course, Nan Gong-yu's most outstanding attribute is his face. His facial features were as exquisite as a god's. With an undoubtedly elegant appearance, he gave people the impression of a ruler overlooking his lands under heaven. Such a powerful and majestic presence easily made a person become subconsciously intoxicated and subdued. With his outstanding appearance, if she was in her past life, she can't say for sure whether she would be able to pay enough to provide for him. Well, although she hadn't had any lovers in her previous life, if she had encountered such an extraordinary man, she certainly wouldn't have let him off. With the power and financial resources available to her in her past life, it wouldn't have been a problem for her to provide for 8 to 10 men. As she looked at those honey-colored arms, his muscles tight with tension, she couldn't help but stretch out her hand and gently caress them. TSK, the feeling is pretty good, hard and yet smooth. She slowly became preoccupied with wondering about how it would feel to touch his six-pack, as when she was treating him she had solely focused on treatment, and now she realized she had forgotten to feel them. All of a sudden, a low and husky voice reached her ears, definitely satisfied. She, without thinking about it, blurted out, "Indeed, really good." Low hypnotic laughter echoed in ears, like a feather teasing her heart. It's good if you like them. Do you want to try touching something else? What? Chapter 154, Attempt for Success. She suddenly jolted awake from her thoughts, and raising her head, she came into contact with a pair of fathomless eyes. A corner of Nan Gong-yu's mouth held a loving smile, while his gaze was gentle and soft as he looked at her. His bright eyes contained waves that promised to drown her. She felt like something was burning her, so she abruptly withdrew her hand. But because she used too much force, she almost stumbled to the ground. Alas, his charm is so potent that it was distracting her. Where did her alertness as an assassin go? She completely hadn't realized that this guy had already awoken. She gave a low cough, and pushing down her embarrassment, she asked, "When did you wake up?" A secret smile shone in Nan Gong-yu's eyes, "When you were mumbling to yourself about how you would provide for me." Cough, cough, cough. She choked on her saliva. She coughed several times, before she then raised her voice in embarrassment, "You heard it wrongly." What provide for him? She wouldn't admit it, she absolutely wouldn't admit it. A patronizing expression appeared across Nan Gong-yu's face, and reaching out a hand, he helped to gently pat her back while lovingly saying, I must have heard it wrongly." She heaved a sigh of relief. At first she had thought that this guy was pretty good, she never would have imagined that he is actually black-bellied. But she soon heard Nan Gong-yu continue, "Compared to you providing for me, it's more likely that I'll provide for you instead." She just blankly stared at him. She wanted to take back her previous thoughts. This guy, through and through, is a black sesame seed to the end. Nan Gong-yu was amused by her rarely seen embarrassed and cute expression. His hand that had been patting her back slowly changed into a gentle stroking motion. Soon, the temperature between the two of them gradually started rising. Unconsciously, Nan Gong-yu had already risen, unhurriedly approaching He. His hot breath fanned across her face, causing the heat hanging in the air to become almost stifling. As the two became closer and closer, their lips nearly touching, She suddenly tilted her head, causing Nan Gong-yu's lips to land on her soft cheek. Panic appeared in She's eyes as she hurriedly stood up. "Silver needles still remain in your body, it'll be some time before they can be removed. You shouldn't move about and randomly tamper with them, be careful or else you will suffer." In actuality, there were only 6 silver needles that remained in Nan Gong-yu's body. These needles were only there for slight adjustments, they didn't have any special effects. Yet She herself was unsure of why she chose this moment to suddenly lie. Seeing that she wanted to struggle free of his grasp, sharpness flashed in Nan Gong-yu's eyes as the silver needles in his body abruptly flew out. His hands holding She tightened, dragging her back into his embrace. The two of them were still separated by the tub, yet their upper bodies were tightly entwined, causing the still wet Nan Gongyu to dampen Heshi's clothes, further reducing their distance. Nan Gongyu bowed his head, watching the girl in his embrace somewhat panic with a helpless expression. The emotion in his eyes flowed like hot spring water, soft and warm, and from his mouth he softly murmured, "You know that I want to kiss you," so, as his voice fell, he bent his head and kissed her deeply. Heshi felt like her whole body was wrapped in a mass of fire, her lips, her breath, her blood, all were being invaded by an unfamiliar taste. The taste of this man was strong and overbearing, yet still filled with adoration. Her mind became fuzzy and she felt that she would become addicted to this feeling, unable to extricate herself, unable to escape. However, an image abruptly appeared in her mind, one of Lingye glaring down at her. She heard that man say, "Since I can't have you, then it would be better to destroy you." That man had been her life and death partner, the only friend and close relative she had acknowledged. Yet ultimately he had stabbed her in the heart with a dagger, laughing like a crazy man, "If you can't be mine, then I will never allow anyone else to have you." 1. Black-bellied equals two-faced. Chapter 155, unrelated. It was like cold water suddenly doused the passion in her heart. In an instant it erased all feelings of addiction that had just started to sprout. Heshi abruptly opened her eyes, vigorously pushing Nan Gongyu away from her. A loud bam sounded as Nan Gongyu was knocked against the edge of tub by her firm push, and he let out a pained groan. His complexion that had just started to regain a little color, once again became deathly pale. Even his skin had once more become icy cold and transparent. The room's door was pushed open and Qing Long rushed in. Noticing that Nan Gongyu was awake and standing, he couldn't help but exclaim, "Master, you're awake." Nan Gongyu's face was ashen, and without taking his gaze off Heshi, he coldly said two words, "Get out." Qing Long trembled under Nan Gongyu's snarl, and seeing that Heshi's clothes were damp, his face blushed and he immediately rushed out. Once again, Heshi and Nan Gongyu were the only two people in the room. Yet this time, the atmosphere between them is no longer one of passion, instead, it was quite frosty. Heshi felt a twinge of guilt as she looked at Nan Gongyu's pale complexion, and hastily stepping forward, she grabbed his hand and took his pulse. Her worry obvious as she asked, "How do you feel now?" Nan Gongyu, however, flipped his hand and grabbed Heshi's small hand, tugging her in front of his body. His sharp eyes gazed at her firmly, as if he wanted to see through her, inside and out. Heshi shuddered when she felt his cold palm, making her worriedly ask, "Can you let go of my hand? Let me help examine you." Who knew that Nan Gongyu wouldn't only not release her hand, instead, his grip on her tightened. His voice gloomy with suppressed anger as he said, "Xier, a moment ago, you were enjoying my embrace, so why did you suddenly push me away? Who did you think of when I was holding you?" Because he cared about her, he was therefore sensitive to the changes in her emotions. He had placed her in his heart and couldn't stand for her to be possessed by anyone else. In that split second before Heshi had shoved Nan Gongyu away, he had been able to sense her sorrow, resentment, and rejection. What kind of experiences had she gone through for her mood to change so abruptly? For whom was she sad? For whom did she grieve? When he thought that there might be another person in his Xier's heart, Nan Gongyu struggled to suppress the bloodthirsty killing intent in his heart. If that person was in front of him now, without the slight hesitation, he would brutally dismember them. Heshi startled, immediately shaking off his hand and snapping, "I don't know what you're talking about. You should quickly sit down and let me examine your condition. The medicine hasn't entered your body completely yet, and if the cold now devours the heat, your condition will be worse than it was before. Do you wish to die?" Nan Gongyu remained unmoved. His eyes stared at her with a fixed gaze, as if he could see deep down into her heart. Heshi became uncomfortable under that overbearing and stubborn gaze, but at the same time, she could see Nan Gongyu's complexion becoming paler. In her heart she hated his overbearing attitude, as much as she hated herself for worrying so much about him. Thus, she angrily flew into a rage and said, "We're completely unrelated to each other, neither friends or family, at most we can be considered strangers. How was it strange that I pushed you away? I don't like acting disrespectful towards strangers, but it's only right that I resist. Or do you think I should welcome any man who I've only known for little more than a month?" Nan Gongyu's face darkened, his beautiful eyes looking like they were about to ignite into flames. With a lightning-fast movement, he extended a nimble hand and firmly seized Heshi's waist, pulling her into his embrace. Grimly laughing, he said, "Ha, completely unrelated to each other, neither friends or family? So in Xier's eyes, I am completely unrelated and only a stranger?" Chapter 156. Not going to bother. When Heshi recalled all the things he had done for her, like repeatedly saving her from traps, she couldn't help but feel guilty, her cheeks reddening. Her urge to push him away faltered and her small hand stayed on his bare chest, not allowing him to come closer, but stopping him from approaching. Nan Gongyu was pleased when he noticed her blushing cheeks, and lowering his head, he used a low, gentle voice to whisper in her ear, "Xier, you had best admit it. From now on, you are one of my people, the princess of Hell King Manor, Nan Gongyu's wife. Besides me, you aren't allowed to think of other men, furthermore, you aren't allowed to leave me." "You're crazy," Heshi replied, retreating back a step in a fluster. Recalling that the people in this manor had been calling her princess, her face once again reddened, but this time with annoyance, "Because you said I'm your princess, I'm your princess. When did I agree to that? When you proposed marriage in the modern era, you must kneel to present the ring." Yet unexpectedly this guy had acted on his own initiative, saying that she is his wife. For what reason? When had she promised to marry him? But in the end, she was still worried about his condition, secretly mumbling a few words to herself, "I'm not going to bother with this crazy man." Then, stepping forward, she grabbed Nan Gongyu's hand and began to take his pulse. This time Nan Gongyu didn't struggle and refuse her, his gaze on Heshi gentle and tender, able to make one's blood run cold. Heshi removed her hand, unhappily staring back at him. A smile flashed in Nan Gongyu's eyes, and raising an eyebrow, he said, "Doesn't Xier remember that you still owe this king a large favor? People say, that to repay the kindness of saving someone's life, you should return it by devoting your life to them. Xier, guess how many times you owe this king your life's devotion." The expression on Heshi's face slowly changed, and following that, she coldly snorted. Removing a bottle of spirit spring water from her space, she passed it to Nan Gongyu, sneering, "It's still unknown who promised who. However, now I'm the one saving your life." A corner of Nan Gongyu's mouth pursed with a slight curve, and he softly said, "How about as long as Xier is happy, this king promises to give in to you?" Heshi stared at him in shock, thinking, "As your highness Hell King, the Azura of legends, you're supposed to be grand. Yet why do you have no sense of shame?" Nan Gongyu was all smiles as he took the spirit spring water, then drained the bottle in one gulp. Once the bottle was empty, astonishment appeared on his face. "This is, ninth secluded spirit spring water?" The look on Heshi's face changed, and caution emerged in her eyes as she asked in a low voice, "How do you know?" She had withdrawn this spirit spring water from her space, and she hadn't seen anything about it in any of the ancient books in this world, so how did Nan Gongyu know? Then what about her Shumi space and Dandan's existence? Will they be exposed? Nan Gongyu's eyes were full of shock as he gazed towards Heshi. "This is indeed spirit spring water from the ninth secluded spirit spring. This kind of spirit spring water is rare in Miluo continent. In legends, apart from being capable of helping to develop muscles, it's able to aid in the refining of pills, and help craft outstanding weapons. It's a treasure that all high-ranking doctors yearn to possess." Heshi frowned as she pondered, "Since there is no ninth secluded spirit spring in Miluo continent, how are you so sure?" Nan Gongyu laughed, and without answering her, he instead continued with, "In legends, it is said that there is a total of 9 types of spiritual springs left in this world since the wars in ancient times. Named according to their level, the ninth secluded spirit spring is the highest. Even the grand clans of the upper realm are only able to take the smallest amounts. And yet Xier, you gave it to me to drink like it was just ordinary spring water. If other people were to know about it, do you know what that would mean? At this moment, He had already calmed down, and hearing what was said, she slightly sneered. But instead of responding to him, she grabbed a handful of silver needles, beginning to rapidly insert the needles into his acupuncture points. Chapter 157, No one is as powerful as your man naturally. He knew that it was never a good idea to inadvertently reveal one's wealth. Therefore, even though Xiaoli and the others were aware that the food she could make was delicious, rich in spiritual energy, and very effective, they were unaware that she used spirit spring water when cooking. However, that was definitely a big secret. So how could she, just because of anxiousness, freely reveal it in front of Nan Gongyu? Could it be that in her heart she already considered Nan Gongyu trustworthy? Heshi's heart trembled, and the silver needles in her hands suddenly deviated from their desired position. Nan Gongyu let out a low groan, that husky, yet rich and magnetic voice like a cat's claws scratching at her heart. Heshi quickly withdrew her hand, and with a somewhat guilty conscience, asked, Are you okay? Nan Gongyu frowned as he replied, It hurts. Her heart wildly jumped about in her chest when she heard his answer. Heshi clearly knew that Nan Gongyu was deliberately acting weak, but he was far too sexy, with such an evildoer appearance. Heshi's face reddened as she removed the silver needles in his body, quietly asking, Now you know pain? Before, when you lost your mind trying to kiss me, how could you not know pain? Serves you right. Nan Gongyu's life is considered to be saved, and after going through several days of treatment, his body might possibly be able to recover to its previous state. But as mentioned earlier, regardless of whether it was the Flame Cave, or Heshi's current prescription, both were only temporarily solutions. Next year, on the 7th day of the 7th month, the cold poison in Nan Gongyu's body will once again flare up as before. In that case, she must think of a way to completely eradicate the cold poison in Nan Gongyu's body. Heshi's mind began to quickly search through every kind of medication and illustration in the All Living Things record. She compared each of them, one by one, hoping to find something with similar symptoms to Nan Gongyu's. While this was happening, Nan Gongyu summoned Qing Long to enter the room to wash him. Once he was dressed in clean clothes, Nan Gongyu returned to the bed to lay down. After he had finished helping, Qing Long quietly exited the room, once again leaving Nan Gongyu and Heshi alone. But Heshi was unaware of it all as she was still immersed in her thoughts. Affection and tenderness overflowed in Nan Gongyu's eyes as he smiled, and extending his hand, he gently gripped Heshi's small, soft hand. Is Xier worried about my illness? Heshi suddenly returned to her senses, struggling to break free of his grasp, yet found herself unable to. She couldn't help but look displeased. So what about it? I am a doctor and I'm interested in incurable illnesses, and anyway, it's something strange. Nan Gongyu decided not to expose her reluctance to admit the truth. Instead, he merely controlled his expression as he said, Xier, do you have an impression of what happened to you when you advanced cultivation bases? Heshi shook her head. She only knew about what had happened from what Qing Long had said. Nan Gongyu's expression became solemn, and in a deep voice he said, I've already warned the people in Hell King Manor, and no one has the courage to speak out about what happened last night. Xier, you must also remember that last night's unusual phenomenon has nothing to do with you. You only suffered injuries and was saved by me, who then brought you here and treated your injuries in one night. As for the rest, I will handle it. You just need to trust me, do you understand? Heshi's heart shivered as she nodded and wondered what he would do, especially since it was an event crying out for a supernatural explanation. When she recalled last night, when she was in a fight over her life and death, she couldn't help but to have lingering fears. You know who was it that wanted to kill me last night? She had heard that group of assassins was from the Drought Demon Organization, however, she didn't know what kind of power the Drought Demon Organization held. Nan Gongyu indifferently replied, the Drought Demon Organization is an underground trading market. They're listed as an assassin organization in Miluo continent. They have been ranked as one of top 3 killers, never slipping from their position. The top 3. Are they very powerful? Asked He with a pondering expression. Nan Gongyu faintly smiled, and all of a sudden he leaned closer to her ear, saying in low voice, "No one is as powerful as your man." Rouge. He pushed him away, her face turning red as she said, "I will deal with my enemies on my own. I can handle it by myself, I don't need your help." "Ha, the Drought Demon organization and whoever wanted to assassinate me, I will let them regret coming to this world." Chapter 158, Glad you trust me so much. Nan Gongyu laughed in a low voice, lovingly caressing her small cheek. Indeed domineering, definitely a fancy woman worthy of me, Nan Gongyu. Whatever she wants to do, know that as your husband, I will support you." "What husband? Who wants you as a husband?" She glanced blankly at him, causing Nan Gongyu to laugh before asking her, "What rank is your cultivation base at now?" Even though he had seen Heshi's cultivation base rapidly increase yesterday, after that strange phenomenon ended, the spiritual energy in Heshi's body had disappeared without a trace. Normally, you can tell what rank a martial artist on the Mi-Luo continent is by the amount of spiritual power that they leak. It was only when they used a special method to conceal it that it was impossible to tell. Otherwise, a high-level martial artist would be able to easily see through to a low-level martial artist's cultivation base. But even with his current cultivation base, Nan Gongyu was completely unable to see Heshi's rank. Hearing what he asked startled Heshi, and following Nan Gongyu's directions, she focused her spiritual power before her eyes, looking towards Nan Gongyu. Suddenly, a clear thought flashed through her mind, middle stage of the nascent soul stage. She suddenly remembered that when she had seen Zhu Ke, Bai Hu, and the others, although she hadn't focused her spiritual power before eyes, she had still received a vague impression that informed her the rank of these people's cultivation bases. How could that be? Even with a spiritual item, isn't it still impossible for a low-level martial artist to see the rank of a high-level martial artist? Heshi's heart was puzzled, when suddenly, Dandan's childlike and lively voice sounded in her ears, "This is all due to Dandan's contribution." "How is it, mother? I'm awesome, right?" Heshi was shocked for a moment before she responded, "Dandan, you're not allowed to read my thoughts as you please. You're invading my privacy." Dandan only laughed mischievously, and with its childlike voice it explained, "Mother, you can rest assured. I know that it would be rude to be doing something indecent like listening when mother and that big brother were playing kissing. Don't worry, Dandan did not see anything." "Dandan, you're too much. And why he is big brother, while I am mother? Do I look that old?" In her mind, she felt like she had just been run over by countless horses. She realized that she needed to find the time to have a proper talk with Dandan. Since it was a baby, this child's education is a must. Nan Gongyu was still waiting for her response, and seeing her expression constantly changing, he couldn't help but ask her, "What's wrong? Is there a problem with your body?" "No," Heshi shook her head, then hesitated as she said, "If I'm feeling it right, I should be on the 8th rank of the foundation establishment stage." Nan Gongyu's eyebrows raised slightly. Although he had expected it, when he heard this result, he still felt surprised. Heshi pursed her lips, and after once again hesitating for a moment, she said, "Also, I seem to be able to clearly see your rank, middle stage of the nascent soul stage." Hearing this first startled Nan Gongyu, before his eyes then immediately filled with joy. Reaching out his hand, he gently tugged Heshi into his embrace, softly laughing as he said, I'm so happy. I'm extremely happy that you trust me so much." Heshi saw Nan Gongyu's brilliant, flower-like smile, and felt that it made his handsome face become more dazzling and stunning. She couldn't help but secretly scold, "Evildoer," in her heart, while saying mockingly, "What are you getting all crazy about?" Nan Gongyu loosened his arms, sternly saying, I'm very happy that you told me, but it should only be limited to me, do you understand? I don't know why you have this ability, but it's very likely that this ability of yours will attract the attention of other martial artists." Heshi scoffed, as she thought it was only to be expected as it was common sense, and said, "Of course I'm aware of this point. Who wouldn't understand that it would be easy for an ordinary and innocent person to get into trouble on account of greed? Do you take me for an idiot?" Chapter 159, Complete Recovery in 3 days. Nan Gongyu's eyes gleamed with a gentle happiness. She clearly knew that she couldn't tell people her secret, yet she easily told him. Hypocritical little girl, still daring to say that she doesn't like him. She examined Nan Gongyu's body once again, to ensure that there were no remaining problems, and gave him a few bottles of spirit spring water for later. She then called Qing Long to enter. After He explained that there were some matters that needed her attention to Nan Gongyu, she prepared to leave. No one could have guessed that Nan Gongyu would suddenly grab her hand though, revealing a grief-filled expression of abandonment towards her. Black lines appeared on He's forehead. It was only after she had repeatedly said that she would come again tomorrow, that Nan Gongyu reluctantly released her. Qing Long followed behind He to send her off, while secretly observing his master's calm and serene face. Comparing it to his pleading look a moment ago, he couldn't help but shudder. He and Qing Long had barely left Nan Gongyu's quarters when she noticed Bai Hu, Wu Xian, Zhu Ke, and the others, anxiously waiting outside the door. Because Nan Gongyu's treatment had drained too much of her spiritual power, added with the temperature change of going from a blisteringly hot area, to a then cool and refreshing area, He's face soon became colorless and somewhat pale. Her exhaustion evident on her face. Noticing her haggard appearance, Zhu Ke was overjoyed, thinking that she had won the bet. With her brows furrowed and fierce eyes, she darted looks of hate towards He while facing Qing Long, and in a loud voice said, "Qing Long, this woman is simply unable to cure Master, right? Now that Master's treatment has been delayed, his body would have suffered more harm, so how will you bear the consequences?" Qing Long slightly narrowed his eyes. He looked at Zhu Ke with disgust. However, he has always lacked much expression, so it was impossible for people to tell what he was feeling as he said, "Zhu Ke, you're so hopeful for Princess to be unable to cure Master. In your eyes, is Master's safety incomparable to your despicable mind? Stop with your venomous slander." Zhu Ke screamed, then shouted hoarsely, "Obviously you easily believe that slut, placing Master in danger. You even still call that slut Princess, you must have fallen for her beauty and were seduced by her, right?" A cold burst of spiritual power abruptly flashed in Qing Long's eyes, and with his long sword suddenly unsheathed and in his hand, he ruthlessly struck towards Zhu Quebec. Zhu Ke only had time to feel immense spiritual power hurtling towards her, like a mountain of pressure on her body. This caused her fall to her knees as she vomited blood, her complexion becoming pale. You, Zhu Ke's voice trembled, and she vomited another mouthful blood that foamed, completely unable to say a word. Wu Xian stepped forward as he anxiously asked, "How is Master's condition now?" Qing Long glanced at He's smirk, before faintly replying, "Master is already awake. In 3 days he'll be completely recovered. I personally confirmed this when I saw Master." When Wu Xian and the others heard this, their expressions showed their relief. And with this burden lifted from their shoulders, the tenseness in their bodies instantly relaxed. Despite Master being just a young man of 20 years old, compared to those of them who had lived for many years, it can be said that they considered him as a nephew. However, for the last few years, Master had used his unparalleled strength and intelligence to become the pillar of Hell King Manor and the Metal Qilin army. Without Master, it was likely that these people would be like headless flies without direction, incapable of knowing what's proper. Chapter 160, New Appearance. Once Zhu Ke heard this, her face blanked, and she looked at He as she screamed, "Impossible! How could she be able to cure Master? Qing Long, you must have teamed up with that slut to deceive us." Qing Long frowned, yet before he was able to speak, He had already taken a step forward as she faintly laughed. "Zhu Ke, since I already have the results of Nan Gongyu's treatment, isn't it about time that you fulfill your side of the bet? If you're truly able to cure Master, I will discard my cultivation base and henceforth no longer be a doctor." Zhu Kei's eyes revealed her panic, and suddenly standing up, she quickly took out a light greenish flying sword. Glaring at Heshi with bloodshot eyes, she screamed, "Slut, you've obviously paired up with Qing Long to deceive me, and now you want me to fulfill the bet? Dream on. Today I shall cut you to pieces, let's see how you will use your fox charm face to seduce master then." After saying this, her hand gripped the flying sword tighter as she leapt towards Heshi. Qing Long and the others became anxious once they saw this. Yet just as they were about to help, after all, Master's safety is now dependent on Miss Nalan's hands, they were stopped by Bai Hu. His eyes hinting at them to watch the play about to unfold. Seeing Zhu Kei's sword thrusting towards her, a golden light suddenly burst from Heshi's body. The golden light contained thunder and lightning, and as it let out a crackle and a rattle, the tip of Zhu Kei's sword reached Heshi's body. Zhu Kei shook all over. Her whole body spasmed as if it had been shocked by electricity, and her hands and feet twitched for a moment, shaking like she was having an epileptic fit. With just a few seconds' pause, Heshi took out her bone whip, lightly and skillfully sweeping it over the top of Zhu Kei's head. "Ah!" Zhu Kei screamed, and as her body retreated backwards, her hands quickly reached up to touch her head. However, she didn't feel the soft fine black hair that normally graced the top of her head as she expected. Instead, she only felt the slippery feeling of blood oozing from her scalp. Zhu Kei became frightened, and lifting her head, she noticed that Bai Hu and the others were trying their best to restrain their laughter, while Nalan Heshi had a sneer upon her face. Soon after, Heshi seemed to think of something, and returning the whip, she next took out a mirror. Facing towards Zhu Kei, she unhurriedly said, "You must be curious about your appearance now, right? Here, take a look at your new appearance that I styled just for you, are you satisfied?" Zhu Kei trembled all over. The mirror reflected a somewhat aged appearance, while on the face there was a sinister, centipede-like scar. Above that face there was now no longer any neatly groomed fine black hair, rather, there was only a smooth baldness. "Ah ah ah!" Zhu Kei let out a miserable scream, "This is not me. This is not me. Slut, you slut, how dare you change my appearance to this? I want you to die with me. I want you to die without a burial." Zhu Kei's eyes became blood red, her face exposing her insanity. All of a sudden, she took out a simple and unadorned lamp from her bosom. The moment they saw that lamp, the expression on Qing Long and the others' faces changed. This seemingly unremarkable lamp was called a dream travel lamp, a high-level magical item given to her by her teacher. This dream travel lamp could only be used by gold core stage and above martial artists. Just one hit could completely deplete the spiritual power within a martial artist's body. In case the spiritual power of the user was insufficient, blood essence could be used instead. But once used, it instantly made the opponent's consciousness fuzzy, causing them to lose all ability to resist. With such a dangerous magical item, Heshi wasn't the only one with an insufficient rank. Even Qing Long and the others were afraid that if Zhu Kei used it, then it wouldn't just be Heshi meeting her end. Chapter 161, Discarded Cultivation Base. Everyone watching expressed anxiousness on their faces as they wanted to save Heshi. But the speed at which Zhu Kei unleashed the dream travel lamp was too quick, and they were simply powerless to block it. As soon as it happened, the top of the lamp let out a light that headed straight towards Heshi. Yet suddenly, a faint white light covered Zhu Kei, together with the dream travel lamp. The radiance surrounding the dream travel lamp was instantly extinguished, once again returning it into a simple and unadorned lamp. It and Zhu Kei then fell towards the ground, Zhu Kei landing on her butt. As she gazed at a point not far in front of her, her eyes filled with panic. Heshi turned around, and saw Nangong Yu unhurriedly walking out. With a straight posture, other than his somewhat pale complexion, he was barely showing any traces of sickness. Yet Heshi could sense the cold energy gradually increasing inside his body. She frowned and was about to speak, but Nangong Yu spoke first. "I heard that you and Xi'er made a bet. That if she was able to cure me, you would discard your cultivation base." Zhu Ke had been blankly staring at Nan Gongyu with infatuation, but when she heard that, she suddenly returned to her senses. Quickly kneeling, she began to weep. Master, this subordinate was merely about worried your safety. Every year your illness flares up, and year after year it becomes more severe. Now, in order to save you when you were close to death, an unknown woman was brought in. Seeing that, this subordinate couldn't help but feel distressed and anxious. Therefore, I thought that as long as my teacher were to come, if my teacher were to come diagnose and treat you, the source of Master's illness would definitely be completely cured. After hearing her remark, he only slightly smirked. So when Zhu Ke raised her head and saw his smiling expression, she thought that Master had forgiven her, her heart becoming extremely happy. But it soon dropped as she listened to Nan Gongyu indifferently say, "Forget it, whether you made a bet or not doesn't matter. Since you've been disrespectful towards Xie, if Xie wants you to be punished, then you should discard your cultivation base at once." Zhu Ke all of a sudden froze and looked up at Nan Gongyu in disbelief. Without waiting for her to react, a white light shaped like a sword flickered on Nan Gongyu's hand, and he casually pointed it at Zhu Quebec. Zhu Ke felt a burst of sharp pain all over her body, then, as if she suddenly sprung a leak, her cultivation base violently flowed out of her body like spring water. Her facial features rapidly aged, and in the blink of an eye, she looked like a 40-year-old woman. "Master, I've always been faithful and true to you, in my heart I've always regarded you as the sky, so how can you do this to me?" Zhu Ke's voice was hoarse, and with her eyes filled with emotions of unwillingness, despair, and resentment, she hysterically screamed. Nan Gongyu looked down at her. His expression was cold, like he was looking at a powerless and low ant. "I said that Xie is my princess and yet you were still disrespectful towards her, it was unfaithful. Due to your selfish desires you blocked Xie from treating me, and that wasn't something a servant should do. Since you've proven yourself to be unfaithful, how do I know that you won't betray my subordinates at any time? If I discard you, what are you going to do about that?" Zhu Ke dropped to the ground at once, tears and traces of blood across her face, while all hope was wiped clean from her features. Nan Gongyu glanced at Qing Long and the others, then indifferently said, "Bring her to the spirit ceiling prison, don't let her easily die." Qing Long and the others promptly complied, dragging the dazed Zhu Ke away. This time, no one sympathized with Zhu Quebec. This woman's actions had already crossed all of their bottom lines, and for her own despicable heart, she had put Master's safety at risk. Her crime deserved 1,000 deaths. He saw Nan Gongyu's complexion become extremely pale, and quickly walking over to him, she said, "You still haven't hurried back to rest? This time you dared to use spiritual power, do you not want your life anymore?" Chapter 162, Jade Fire Toad. Nan Gongyu laughed faintly, reaching out his hand in the direction of the dream travel lamp. The dream travel lamp then lightly floated up to Nan Gongyu's hand. He gave the lamp to He, gently caressing her cheek as he said, "Xie, these past few days I've been the cause of your suffering, leading you to being wronged. I didn't kill Zhu Ke not because I mean to spare her life, but because her teacher has her life lantern. If her teacher were to know that Zhu Ke had died, the Doctors Association will try to find out how, and it will cause you danger instead. Don't be angry, okay?" "I'm not angry." He spoke without thinking the matter through, pushing him back into the room. Just a mere Zhu Ke, of course she wouldn't take it to heart. Not to mention, all the weapons in her possession have yet to be fortified. At the moment Zhu Ke might not feel anything wrong with the wound on her head, but in a few days she will be in so much pain that she will wish she could die. She will naturally take revenge by herself on those she has hatred for. To use other people's hands to get revenge for her is simply not her style. After Nan Gongyu returned to his room to rest, He sighed. Yet just as she was about to leave, she was stopped by Qing Long and the others. "Princess, may I ask, do you have a way to completely cure Master's illness?" He stared blankly once she heard this, then the light in her eyes slightly flashed. In regards to this problem, she had also been pondering over it, but when she was in the room before she had finally recalled something. After searching her memory, she finally found one type of poison herb that elicited similar symptoms to Nangong Yu's. In the All Living Things record there is a highly graded cold poison, called Ice Star Seed. If absorbed, the Ice Star Seed would cause the yin energy in the body to reach its peak, inside and outside, freezing and stiffening the blood and inner organs. For an ordinary people to take the Ice Star Seed, if the opposite object wasn't immediately found, it would be inevitable that the first time the illness flared they would die. With these kinds of symptoms, it can be said to be a very similar situation to the cold poison in Nangong Yu's body. And in the All Living Things record, it was recorded that the Ice Star Seed's nemesis is the Jade Fire Toad. The Jade Fire Toad is different to common yang objects as it is a kind of spirit pet. In itself it doesn't have a fierce yang attribute, but its nature is to absorb cold energy, dissolving the cold energy without corrosion. Therefore, in the All Living Things record, it was documented that people who suffered from the Ice Star Seed, as long as they kept a Jade Fire Toad by their side, every time the illness flared up it would absorb the cold energy, relieving any pain. This process would continue until the effectiveness of the Ice Star Seed was depleted, then the illness will be completely recovered. Only, was the cold poison Nangong Yu bore caused by the Ice Star Seed? She couldn't wait to discuss this because if she was able to procure a Jade Fire Toad, at least his body wouldn't receive such damage caused by continuously entering the flame cave, while the risks to his health would also be reduced. She hesitated a moment before answering, "Do you know what a Jade Fire Toad is?" Jade Fire Toad? Qing Long and the others looked at each other in dismay, their expressions revealing their confusion. Qing Long even called a fourth-rank doctor in Hell King Manor to come over. He was a gray-haired old man, and although his rank wasn't as high as Zhu Ke, his knowledge was vaster than hers. But when he heard this, he also repeatedly shook his head. Jade Fire Toad? What magic pill is that? This old one has seen all of the lists describing Mi Luo continent's magic pills, but has never heard of that one. Young lady, are you sure you haven't heard the name wrong? She helplessly shook her head. It seemed that the things in the All Living Things record really couldn't be found in this world. Seeing Heshi's helpless expression, Qing Long couldn't help but to anxiously ask, is there no other way besides the Jade Fire Toad? Chapter 163, Secret Territory. I haven't yet thought of another way. Heshi pondered for a moment, then suddenly took out a blank jade slip. After pouring her divine sense into it for a quarter of an hour, she then threw it to Qing Long. Here's a detailed description of the Jade Fire Toad's characteristics, growth habit, and appearance. In the future when all of you go out, pay a lot of attention when looking for it. If you can find a Jade Fire Toad, I guarantee that Nangong Yu will no longer need to enter the flame cave. At first Qing Long and the old doctor had thought that Heshi was only speaking nonsense, but when they saw the detailed descriptions vividly imprinted on the jade slip, they couldn't help but somewhat believe her. If it was only nonsense, it wouldn't be possible to compile such detailed information in such a short amount of time. Thinking that finding the Jade Fire Toad could cure Master's illness, Qing Long became excited. I'll immediately convey this information to everyone we know. I will use Hell King Manor's influence and try to find the Jade Fire Toad with all my strength. Master's illness, we entrust it to Princess. Heshi waved her hand, before turning around and leaving Hell King Manor. The moment she passed through Hell King Manor's gate, she suddenly stopped with an annoyed expression on her face. Why was she becoming more and more accustomed to the title of princess? She was now starting to feel that it was proper and to be expected. This is simply not scientific. Heshi refused Qing Long's offer to arrange guards to accompany her home, hurriedly walking in the direction of her courtyard since flying swords weren't allowed to be used in Yanjing City. Before leaving her courtyard, although she alone had led those assassins away, she couldn't be sure whether or not the Drought Demon organization had sent other people to follow Wet Nurse Chen and the others. Therefore, Heshi was now very worried about the safety of Wet Nurse Chen, Shaoli, and the rest. At this moment, Yanjing City was full of clamoring. Wherever she passed, she now and then heard the lamenting of families. Spiritual plants were withered, the crystal stones that weren't placed in storage tools had turned into dust, and even high-level magical items were damaged. Cold sweat dripped down Heshi's forehead. She really hadn't expected that what she and Dandan did last night would lead to such a big commotion now. Let alone those spiritual plants, even all the flowers and grass that she passed along the way seemed to have lost their vitality. Their leaves drooped, all dull and listless. Now what she had done was the talk of the town. But, when Heshi passed the city's most prosperous East Street, she found that the atmosphere here and its surroundings were somewhat different. The street was filled with anger, irritability, and disappointment. Sometime overnight, every hotel and restaurant had had a sudden influx of unfamiliar martial artists. The average cultivation base was foundation establishment stage, but there were also quite a lot of meridian stage too. Even Heshi, as she weaved through the crowd on the second story of the intoxicated immortal restaurant, could detect several strong gold core stage martial artists. These martial artists' faces showed both nervousness and excitement. Occasionally they would glance to the west, their eyes filled with determination, greed, and desire. Heshi frowned slightly, her pace somewhat slowing. Why had those martial artists gathered here? Concentrating her spiritual energy to her ears, she could faintly hear the dialogue of a few people downstairs. In my opinion, that was not the arrival of the demon day and night, that was clearly the secret territory coming into being. Our sect has already ascertained that it's in Song Mountain, so this time we must be faster than the other families. Once we get the secret territory's magical item, our sect will certainly be able to become Jin Ling's #1 sect. What is the use of this Jin Ling country's group of trash? Even a few nascent soul stage martial artists can't be found here. The hidden treasure is ours, the country is beyond. Chapter 164, At the Base of Song Mountain. Hidden treasure. Wasn't my courtyard exactly at the base of Tsang Mountain? If all the high-level martial artists proceeded towards Tsang Mountain, then the safety of Wet Nurse Chen and the others. Heshi's complexion changed slightly, and not in the mood to eavesdropping anymore. Her pace suddenly accelerated as she headed downstairs, rushing as fast as lightning towards her courtyard. In the blink of an eye Heshi reached the base of Tsang Mountain, discovering that as expected, martial artists swarmed the surrounding area, forming a large crowd. But fortunately, many people probably felt afraid of this secret territory with a hidden treasure, so at this point, most were still busy preparing manpower. What alarmed Heshi the most though, was that she momentarily couldn't find her own courtyard. It hadn't been razed to the ground, leaving only ruins for everyone to see. Rather, there was now an ordinary meadow where the courtyard had originally been standing. It was impossible to tell that there had previously been a building there. Just when Heshi was starting to be overcome with worry and bewilderment, her ears suddenly heard Shijia's pleasantly surprised voice, "Miss, you've finally come back." Heshi turned her head, noticing a sweat-covered Shijia approaching with a relieved expression. Once a proud-looking man, he now cut a sorry figure. His body was covered with dust, sweat dripped from his forehead, and his eyes were somewhat red. He was almost crying tears of joy when he saw her. Heshi quickly stepped forward and asked, "What happened? What about the courtyard? Are Wet Nurse Chen and the others still safe?" Shijia nodded repeatedly, and pointing at the original position of the courtyard, he said, "Miss, don't worry, the courtyard is still there." Shaoli used her smokescreen technique to conceal the place. Only a martial artist of foundation establishment stage and higher will be able to find it, as long as they gather their spiritual energy to their eyes. When so many martial artists suddenly came here, we were really afraid we were going to be found, but fortunately miss, you came back. In the beginning, Shijia and the others had regarded Heshi as a man. After all, female cultivators were rare in Miluo continent, preferring instead to get married. Therefore, they didn't doubt Heshi's gender at first. But later, after staying in the courtyard for a while, seeing and experiencing Heshi's methods and abilities, they immediately discovered that she is a woman. Yet to them, it was irrelevant. Being able to follow such a master is the greatest luck of their lifetime, so as for whether their master is a man or a woman, they really didn't care. All of them firmly believed that one day, Master's radiance will shine in front of all the martial artists in Miluo continent. After listening to Shi Jia's words, He used her spiritual eyes, and sure enough, she discovered that her courtyard stood perfectly fine in its original place. It was only then that she heaved a sigh of relief. This was beyond her expectations. Shaoli actually had this kind of ability. She was able to use her smokescreen technique to deceive martial artists below foundation establishment stage. He hurriedly rushed to the courtyard, where Wet Nurse Chen and the others were anxiously waiting for news from her. Once Wet Nurse Chen saw He, she was almost crying as she rushed over to her. Examining He up and down, she then wiped her tears. "Miss, how could you do this, risk your valuable self to, if you were to die, in the future when I go to the underworld, how could I explain this to madam?" "All right, Wet Nurse, don't cry. In the future, I won't do this again." He helplessly repeated this to appease Wet Nurse Chen, while inside, she felt a burst of warmth that she hadn't felt for a very long time. In this shabby courtyard there were people that worried about her, cared about her, trusted her, and they treated her genuinely. For her rely on their trust, this is a feeling that she had never experienced before. Obviously she has a bunch of cumbersome people shadowing her, but she wasn't sick of them in the slightest. Instead, she was full of hope for this life. Chapter 165, Nine-Tailed Fox. When He inspected her surroundings, yet didn't see Shaoli, she couldn't help but ask in surprise, "Where's Shaoli?" It can be said that whenever she returned home, usually Shaoli was the first person to pounce on her, acting like a spoiled child. After hearing her question, Wet Nurse Chen's face immediately changed into a grateful, yet worried expression. "Miss, you wouldn't know this, but it was thanks to Shaoli's actions last night that we can now be safe. But after that she shut herself in her room, and no matter what we say, she still refuses to come out. Miss, you better go and quickly see her." Last night, after He had left to distract the assassins, Shaoli, Shi Jia, and the others had been worried about He, so they secretly snuck back into the courtyard. However, they didn't even see the single silhouette of a person in the courtyard. They only found He's room filled with blood, and an unfamiliar man's body. On one hand, they were frightened of someone breaking into the courtyard, while on the other hand, they were anxious about He's safety. They didn't dare leave, so they could only wait in the courtyard, hoping that they would be able to see He's safe return. Who would have thought that when they were waiting, the spiritual energy in the surroundings would suddenly riot? Normally, the spiritual energy at the base of Tsang Mountain is scarce, so even the spiritual energy vortex couldn't spread to here. Yet unexpectedly, the originally desolate Tsang Mountain suddenly experienced a strange change, and a portion of tremendous power caused rare beasts to stampede down from the top of the mountain. Out of all the beasts hiding in Tsang Mountain, a great number of them flowed like waves as if they were chased by something, frantically fleeing in disarray. And that portion of tremendous power pouring down from the top of mountain also spread to their small courtyard. The moment it almost came into contact with the edge of the small courtyard, Li Si and several others' puppets, as well as other servants waiting outside, died instantly without a peep, blood dripping from every pore in their body. Just when everyone in the courtyard was in imminent peril, Shaoli suddenly used up all her spiritual power to form an empty spiritual barrier, keeping them all safe in the courtyard. Although the force of stampeding beasts only lasted for a moment, in order to maintain the empty spiritual barrier, Shaoli ended up vomiting out a big mouthful of blood. Afterward, she shut herself in her room and refused to come out. He arrived alone outside of Shaoli's room and knocked on the door. "Shaoli, it's me, can you open the door?" In the room, the low sound of something banging could be heard, but soon after, silence. Then, a soft sobbing sound was faintly heard. He's brows furrowed slightly, and gathering her spiritual energy into her hands, she placed them on the door, lightly pushing on it. Soon after, the tightly closed door easily opened. Walking into the room in large strides, she saw Shaoli crouched in a ball on the corner of the bed. Wrapped up in a quilt, not even her head was revealed, her small body trembling incessantly. He shut the door, and walked slowly to the bedside. "Shaoli, come out and speak to me." Shaoli's body shook inside the quilt, and she tearfully said, "Miss, don't come near me, I'll scare you." Wah, I don't want Miss to hate me, He frowned, wanting to remove the quilt. But just as her hand was about to meet the quilt, Xiaoli quickly dodged. With her body still shaking, her weeping became even more sorrowful and despair-filled. Yet just when He felt helpless, Dandan's childish voice sounded in her ears, Mother, Mother, I smell a nine-tailed spirit fox's scent. Is a nine-tailed spirit fox's meat delicious? Mother, roast it for me to eat. Nine-tailed spirit fox. He startled when she heard this, immediately recalling the information recorded in the All Living Things record. The nine-tailed spirit fox is one of the ancient beasts. The fox's body is strong and full of vitality. Each time it advances, it will grow another tail. Each tail possesses one kind of magic power, and once it grows all 9 tails, it will have the power to turn the world on its head. Chapter 166, The Ancient Beast. Each tail of a 9-tailed spirit fox is more valuable than any treasure. After it has achieved 6 tails, it will be a treasure all martial artists yearn for. Although the 9-tailed spirit fox is an animal, it possesses the ability to perfectly transform its appearance. They caused a great threat to humans, so they were gradually all exterminated. They are currently extinct in the Luo continent. Dandan said it smelled the scent of a 9-tailed spirit fox, and other than herself, there was only Xiaoli in this room. So does that mean she is the 9-tailed spirit fox? He was astonished, yet she kept hearing Dandan making noise about wanting to eat 9-tailed spirit fox meat, so she unhappily said, This is your sister, Xiaoli. If you once again say that you want to eat 9-tailed spirit fox meat, don't ever think I'll make food for you to eat in the future. Dandan's voice choked off, and he didn't dare make a noise again. He felt aggrieved as he said, Mother, don't be angry. Dandan won't eat 9-tailed spirit fox meat. Mother, quickly go and prepare food for Dandan. He's gaze once again landed on the trembling Xiaoli as she gently asked, Xiaoli, you're a 9-tailed spirit fox. As He finished speaking, Xiaoli lifted the quilt to look at her in surprise. Miss, you knew. Just as He glanced at Xiaoli, she spotted a long furry tail behind her, the color of its fur a pure silvery white. Under the light it appeared mysterious, noble, and beautiful. Xiaoli's expression suddenly stiffened, her eyes revealing her despair and fear. Since you know, Miss, please kill me and take my tail. Rather than being killed by other people's hands and suffering torment, I would rather die in Miss's hands. Take it as a repayment for saving my brother's life. What would I do with your tail? He glanced at Xiaoli in boredom. Make a fur coat. Xiaoli's eyes widened. The distress on her face transforming into a blank look. Miss, you didn't know? A 9-tailed spirit fox's tail is a precious treasure. If you take it and sell it, what nonsense are you talking about? He sneered, You're my servant, I own you. If you were sold, then wouldn't I suffer a big loss? You think I'll go through with such a detrimental business transaction? He's mouth was speaking in a disgusted manner, but in her heart, she couldn't help but celebrate. What kind of good luck is this? She just randomly helped heal someone on the streets, yet unexpectedly, she ended up bringing back an ancient beast. Though, she didn't know what beast her brother is. Could it be that he is a male fox? Having heard what was said, Xiaoli became dumbfounded. Staring at He in a daze, she saw that her expression was indifferent and serene. Neither greed, desire, or loathing was evident. Miss, she really didn't regard her as different. In Mrs. eyes she is still the same Xiaoli, still her little servant girl. Her heart finally relaxed from the despair and fear that had plagued her for a day and night. Xiaoli pouncing into He's arms as she wept and wailed. She had been really scared. Before she came to this mortal world, her brother had repeatedly warned her thousands of times, telling her that by all means she mustn't let humans discover her true form, or else she would be taken advantage of and skinned. She even once heard the birds personally talk about a member of her fox clan being boiled alive by humans. And afterwards, once he had died, they peeled his skin and tail off intact. Chapter 167, lost a tail in Xiao Li's small heart. She knew there were good people amongst the human race, but still a larger amount of bad people. Especially when they found out the secret about her body, then no one could hold back. However, ever since she's followed Miss, she's become more like her Miss, like this family, so last night she plucked up her courage and risked her secret being discovered to prop up the empty spiritual barrier, saving all the people in the courtyard. The empty spiritual barrier is a technique that belongs to nascent soul stage martial artists, but with Xiao Li's current cultivation base, she was only able to maintain it for a very short time before she surpassed her limits. So for her to maintain it, she had to sacrifice one tail, which she had cultivated with great difficulty. She now couldn't do anything to maintain her complete human form again. So this night, she hid in her room in fear that Miss and the others would find out her true identity, drag her out, and sell her off. However, the fact is, that Miss and the other human beings here were really different. Xiao Li and her brother really didn't trust the wrong people. She felt a headache starting as she looked at the little girl who had thrown herself into her arms weeping and gasping for breath. Seeing Xiao Li wipe her tears and mucus on her clothes, she wanted to kick her. How can one or two of her people always cause her such trouble? Still, watching the little girl's red and swollen eyes, her weak and frail body, she somewhat couldn't bear it. In regards to yesterday's large calamity, if it wasn't for Xiao Li, the whole courtyard would have long been destroyed, and she would have regretted it for sure. Xiao Li had used an ability that surpassed her strength, so certainly she's received a lot of injuries. Seeing this little girl being so pitiful and adorable, if she wanted to cry and wipe her face, then so be it. She helplessly comforted her. Once she saw that Xiao Li's crying had almost stopped, only then did she push her away. Alright, have you cried enough? Let me help you examine your injuries. Xiao Li wiped at the tears streaking her red face, swishing the white tail behind her as she mumbled, Miss, don't worry, I'm alright, I only lost one tail, that's all. She said only losing one tail isn't serious. It was known that the nine-tailed spirit fox is an animal defying the natural order of things, and that those that advance in rank can also have heaven-level problems. Losing one tail meant that she couldn't maintain her human form, so this time Xiao Li's loss is really big. She's eyes softened, and extending her hand to touch the little girl's face, she softly said, anyway, this time you've saved everyone in the courtyard, I owe you a favor. Thank you, Xiao Li. The blush on Xiao Li's face deepened, her eyes were as bright as the stars in the night sky, and grabbing Heshi's arm, she shyly smiled as she said, Miss, I'm so happy I'm able to know you, and that I'm able to stay by your side. In this world, there is certainly no nine-tailed spirit fox as lucky as I am. Black lines appeared on Heshi's forehead. Silly little girl, since when did you learn to use such sweet speech and honeyed words? Pursing her lips, Heshi hid the amused expression in her eyes and said, as for your strength, you can rest assured, I will help you to regain it. In the future, I will certainly find a way to help you advance. As she finished speaking, she took out a bottle of spirit spring water from her space, lightly saying, this is water concocted by myself to help you replenish your spiritual power. After you drink this water, you can at least maintain your human form. To help replenish spiritual power, there is nothing able to compare to the spiritual spring water in her space. Unfortunately, she is unable to reveal the existence of her space to people, and moreover, the spiritual energy of the ninth secluded spirit spring is extremely strong, so it's not easy to conceal it. So, after being cautioned by Nan Gongyu, she used a strong medicament with a concentrated amount of spiritual power, and then diluted it with the spring water. This resulted in the spiritual spring water currently within Xiao Li's hand. Chapter 168, Courtyard Protection. This kind of spiritual spring water, although its level of replenishing spirit power can't compare with the ninth secluded spirit spring water, compared to the accumulated spirit pill, ordinary spiritual spring water is much stronger. But this way the smell of the ninth secluded spirit spring water was completely covered, so she didn't need to worry about the existence of her space and the ninth secluded spirit spring's water being discovered. Xiao Li took the spiritual spring water and drank a few mouthfuls of it. In a short time she felt clearer, her entire body that had been lacking spiritual power suddenly started to rapidly recover. Once she finished drinking all of the water in the bottle, the tail on her back slowly shrunk, then disappeared without a trace. Her pale and sallow face also becoming brighter. Xiaoli held the bottle, wishing there was still more. Licking a corner of her mouth, she quietly said, "Miss, what is this water? It's so good." He easily threw her another big bottle, and lightly said, "If it's tasty then drink it slowly. Once you've finished drinking it, come out and accompany me to inspect this courtyard's protection." After a series of things happening these last 2 days, He was now deeply aware that the safety of this courtyard is too low. She must find the time to reform it, especially because of the strange changes in Song Mountain recently. On top of that, a large group of martial artists had come to Tsang Mountain, and Xiao Li's smokescreen technique wasn't a guarantee that they wouldn't be found. Although with her current financial situation, she was now able to purchase a better house in Yanjing City for everyone to live in. But firstly, this side of Tsang Mountain was peaceful and He liked that there was no sign of human habitation. Secondly, since she first arrived here she had felt that Tsang Mountain is a piece of treasured land. Whether it is training Shi Jia and the others, or the future fortification, Tsang Mountain is her best choice. As for the thin spiritual energy, she has her space and spirit spring. Shi Jia and the others weren't walking a traditional martial artist's path, so in regards to the amount of spiritual energy, she really didn't care. He took out the All Living Things record that old man Shumi had left for her, and flipped through its pages till she reached the spell formation chapter, reading it carefully. Because the All Living Things record is mainly an introduction, there were no detailed instructions on high-level spell formations inside. Nevertheless, old man Shumi had still written down the methods and theories for some simple and ordinary spell formations. From it, He found one type that was fairly practical, and combining it with Xiao Li's smokescreen technique, it would be able to form some protection over the courtyard. In this way, if a martial artist used spiritual eyes, they still wouldn't be able to find a trace of the courtyard. Even if they walked around it, they would automatically detour past. If a gold core stage or higher martial artist intentionally investigated, they might vaguely detect that something was wrong. Although this protection couldn't be regarded as absolutely foolproof, the need for some sort of protection was urgent. On top of that, He also had many things she must to do, so for the time being, she couldn't find a better spell formation. Moreover, the most urgent thing now is for her to gather all the withered spiritual plants in the city. After all, those withered spiritual plants were just waste material for other people, but for her, they were a hard-to-describe treasure. He dispatched Shi Jia and the others to go out, telling them to use any method they could to collect all the spiritual plants from every courtyard in Yanjing City and along the way. Especially those from influential families. Almost every family has their own medicinal field, so they probably have large amounts of precious spiritual plants. Even though the spiritual energy in them had completely vanished and they couldn't grow anymore, the basic medicinal efficacy still existed. If she could get these plants, she would be able to completely improve the physical condition of Wet Nurse Chen, Shi Jia, and the others' bodies. Oh, of course the most important part is that she wouldn't have to spend a cent. Shi Jia and the others left in the morning, returning in the afternoon. Every one of them carried a huge sack on their backs, only, their complexions weren't good at all. Chapter 169, Medicine Delivery. He's brows wrinkled slightly, a light as sharp as a sword flashed in her eyes, while her mouth indifferently said, "These are enough, as for those foolish people's words, you don't need to take them seriously. One day you will let them know, who is waste, and who is trash." Shi Jia and the others' eyes suddenly shined, the depression and humiliation lingering on their faces immediately swept away, and they nodded at He. Just at this moment, He's ears heard Qing Long's voice, "Princess, this subordinate is at your courtyard's gate, there is something I have to discuss with you." He was surprised, her figure flashed, and she abruptly appeared outside. Qing Long's cultivation base had already reached the peak of gold core stage, so long as he was determined to explore, of course he could easily discover the courtyard. But even though he found the courtyard, he couldn't easily enter. He could only wait outside and transmit his voice through the smokescreen technique. Once Qing Long saw He, he promptly hinted at his subordinates to come out. There were dozens of Hell King Manor's bodyguards, each carrying 2 big bags. One by one, they placed them in front of He. He's eyes widened in astonishment, because without her opening the bags and looking, she could already smell the scent of medicinal herbs. Qing Long bowed as he spoke. Master heard that Princess was collecting withered spiritual plants, so he ordered this subordinate to gather all the withered spiritual plants from every large influential family, as well as from the imperial palace. I hope Princess accepts it. For a moment, He didn't know what she should say. Nan Gongyu, this guy was obviously still ill, but unexpectedly, he still knew her each and every move. Without waiting for her to open her mouth and ask, he helped collect the medicinal herbs for her and sent it to her door. These spiritual plants, a lot of Hell King Manor's manpower and physical resources must have been spent on it, right? Qing Long, however, quickly interrupted her. His voice was laced with proudness as he said, if Hell King Manor wants spiritual plants from every family, let alone withered, even if they were still healthy, every family will still obediently send it. Master only needed to send out a notice, and every house sent several bags by themselves. Princess doesn't need to worry about being inconvenienced. Qing Long, you sure you haven't come to provoke my people who collected medicinal herbs from door to door, even being driven out? Your overbearing prince is simply too hateful. He's mouth twitched. Help me to thank Nan Gongyu. Also, I'll go to Hell King Manor tomorrow morning for his second stage of treatment. Hearing this, Qing Long's eyes lit up and he quickly bowed, then, thank you Princess for your trouble. Finished speaking, he left with his group of people using flying swords. He was the Hell King's personal bodyguard, an expert of gold core stage, and using his distinguished identity, he brought these piles of medicinal herbs. Wasn't it in order to specially get this message from He? Believed that when he returned and his master heard this information, he would certainly be happy. With this large amount of medicinal herbs, He quickly wrote out several new prescriptions, instructing Xiao Li and wet nurse Chen to go prepare them. These prescriptions were to help Shi Jia and the others to temper their bodies, and there was also one to help wet nurse Chen heal. After a period of training Shi Jia and the others, whether in strength or temperament, they had already made quite an improvement. When they wore black clothing for practice, their appearance reminded He of her past organization members when they were training. Shi Jia and Shi Mao experienced the most rapid growth out of all of them. Their strength had already firmly reached the 9th rank of Qi refining stage, and as soon as they completed this stage of body tempering, they would be able to reach the peak of Qi refining stage. Next, they would start to advance to foundation establishment stage. But because their practice method was unusual, there were no cultivation records available at the market. So for the time being, He had not yet found a way to help them advance to foundation establishment stage. Chapter 170, Revival. As for wet nurse Chen, after she used this period of time to nurse her health, the clog in her meridians gradually cleared, while her aged complexion also became a little younger. And this time, after using medicinal baths and silver needle treatments to help allow her to resume cultivating, she slowly entered Qi refining stage. Unfortunately, for her to return to her previous cultivation stage, it would still take a long time. After all, wet nurse Chen's cultivation base had been crippled for too long. After she had finished dealing with the medicinal ingredients that were needed to treat wet nurse Chen, Shi Jia, and the others, She returned to her room to enter her space. Since Shi Jia and Nan Gongyu had both collected withered spiritual plants, she now had too much. She had so much that it would last her a very long time, so He brought the bulk of it into her space, preparing to categorize it. However, she had barely entered her space when she was surprised by the scene inside. Noticing Dandan's plump body crouched in the ancient rhyme spiritual field, she watched as it used its short hands and legs to diligently dig small holes, planting the withered herbs. He was about to tease Dandan that it didn't have any common sense, as how could the withered plants live again? After all, once dead, the spiritual plants would need to be grown from a seed again to be alive, yet before her smile reached her eyes, she was shocked to discover that the dried herbs that Dandan planted into the ground suddenly restored themselves back to green, and at a speed visible to the naked eye. With branches and leaves gently swaying, it looked completely full of life. She rubbed her eyes. She simply couldn't believe what her eyes were seeing and thought it was perhaps just her fantasy. However, once she turned around, she realized that the spiritual plants behind Dandan were also alive, and not only that, every stalk was green and lush, full of vitality. How could this be? Could it be that the ancient rhyme spiritual field was capable of bringing spiritual plants back to life? This is really too nature-defying. Dandan raised its head and saw Hashi. With surprise etched across its face, it used its short legs to run to Hashi, then hugged her leg as it acted like a spoiled child. "Mother, I was too bored, you haven't come to play with me in ages." "Right, did you bring me something delicious?" From the storage ring on her finger, Hashi took out a roast deer leg for Dandan. Seeing it swallow it clean in one big bite, she then picked Dandan up and used her finger to point at the now filled with green spiritual field, asking it, "Did you plant these?" "Yes, isn't Mother happy I sorted it out?" Dandan nibbled on the end of its small hand as it laughed foolishly with an adorable grin. "Mother, isn't Dandan well behaved? Did I help you?" "Dandan, you're really great." Hashi was calm on the outside, but inside, she was overjoyed. Kissing Dandan's small and tender cheek several times, she said, "Dandan, you can continue to sort it all out. After you finish, Mother will reward you with a large table full of delicious food." Dandan had just eaten roasted deer leg and wished to eat it again, so when it heard what was said, it immediately laughed happily. With eager strides, it used its small short legs to run back to the field for more planting. Hashi felt curiosity prick her heart. Picking up the stalk of a withered spiritual plant, she then dug a hole and planted it. However, while she expected the spiritual plant to live again, it did nothing. The withered herb was still withered, giving off no sign that it would live once more and become green. Hashi looked at Dandan in shock. "Dandan, how could this be? How was it that when Dandan planted the herbs they were able to live again, but when she did it, nothing happened? Could it be that it wasn't because of the ancient rhyme spiritual field, and rather, it was because of Dandan?" Dandan touched the small antennae on its head, its face confused. It then raised its claw and touched the dried herb that Hashi planted. The next moment, that small stalk of withered herb that had lacked vitality, suddenly revived in front of her. Chapter 171, Mystical Dandan. Hashi couldn't believe her eyes, so she tried another 3 plants. She even tried watering the withered spiritual plants with a little water from the 9th secluded spirit spring, but they still remained withered, completely devoid of any intention of giving her face by living again. Hashi helplessly gave up on rejuvenating the plants. She was already certain that Dandan is a mystical being, while she is just a normal human. It was better to not challenge supernatural events. Dandan sensed Hashi's disappointment, and with a deadpan expression, it patted her shoulder. Trying to comfort her, it gave her a look that clearly read, "Mother, don't be sad," causing Hashi to not know whether she should laugh or cry. Touching Dandan's small antennae, she cunningly said, "Poor Dandan, I can't do anything to help you. I have no choice but to leave it to you to plant the rest of these spiritual plants." Dandan looked at the large pile of withered herbs beside it. Its smiling face immediately transformed into one of tears, and with its small antennae hanging down, its grievances were plastered all over its face. Hashi couldn't help but laugh. Now, don't feel wronged. I was about to prepare food for you and you can eat until full, will this do?" When Dandan heard this, its tears finally turned into laughter. With renewed vigor, it returned to planting its pile of withered plants. And so, since she couldn't help with the planting, Hashi entered the spirit firmament palace and began collecting food ingredients. After the master and pet pair had heartily eaten, Dandan continued transforming the withered plants back into usable spiritual plants. Meanwhile, He started harvesting the already ripe spiritual vegetables and spiritual fruits in her space, cooking them into delicious food. Looking at the spirit firmament palace filled with spiritual fruits, a thought flashed through He's mind about brewing wine. One must know that the value of spirit wine was very high. Coupled with diluted spirit spring water from the 9th secluded spirit spring, the brewed wine would be extraordinary. He buried half of the wine jugs in the spiritual field, and placed the remaining portion of jugs in the 9th secluded spirit spring. In her previous life, she had also once brewed wine and placed it in the spirit spring. Back then, after 3 to 4 days, she had discovered that the brewed wine was a success. Moreover, after only brewing for such a short time, the spirit spring wine, compared to wine brewed in the real world for a few years, had a far richer taste. Now that the spirit spring had been promoted, the quality of the wine would have certainly increased. As for the spiritual field, the previous spiritual field was barren and filled with sandy soil. Due to this, she had never even considered burying wine in it before. But now that the ancient rhyme spirit field's spiritual power is rich, it might be possible that the quality of the wine will greatly improve, and she wanted to give it a try. However, what she was unaware of, was that growth rate of the ancient rhyme spirit field had increased 100-fold. It was now not only effective to the spiritual plants planted on top, it also affected the spirit wine buried below. And so, when she finally went to uncover the spirit wine, the fragrance of the wine was almost potent enough to intoxicate all the beasts on a mountain. She was totally dumbfounded. Of course, this is already way more than she could have hoped for. The next morning, she left the courtyard early to go to Hell King Manor. Compared to yesterday, the amount of martial artists at the base of Tsang Mountain had now increased. Their expressions were filled with anxiousness, determination, and excitement. The ranks of the martial artists from last night had varied between Qi refining stage and foundation establishment stage. Today, there weren't any Qi refining stage martial artists to be seen. Instead, it was all groups of soldiers who were either foundation establishment stage or meridian stage martial artists. And many of the clothes the martial artists were wearing were of the same design, clearly indicating that they were from the same clan. Fortunately, they all gathered on the west side of Tsang Mountain, while He's courtyard was on the east side. Coupled with the proper camouflage, no one had yet noticed the existence of her courtyard. However, there was a lot of curiosity in He's heart. In the end, just what had happened inside of Tsang Mountain that it could make so many martial artists rush here? Once her business with Nangongyu was concluded, she was determined to investigate. After all, here is where her headquarters were located. If there really was a secret territory, she would feel that she had failed if she let others discover it before herself. With the morning sunshine just starting to warm the top of Hell King Manor's glazed tile roof, she arrived before the door of the manor. At this point, she was wearing a white moon brocade robe. With a jade crest in her hair, it showed off the elegant and refined facial features of her disguise as a man. Her skin was exquisite, just like porcelain. Long shapely eyebrows were above phoenix eyes that seemed to radiate an inner light, while her lips were the red of ripe cherries. She was obviously dressed up as a man, yet she still attracted the gazes of people on the road. Chapter 172, His Highness Third Prince. Many people watching felt their hearts quiver, some even stopped paying attention to where they were walking and crashed into walls, thinking, how can there be such a beautiful man in this world? If I could have him, even if I had to become gay, I would still be willing. She had barely arrived before Hell King Manor's gate, when she noticed that it was surrounded by a crowd of people. In the lead, there was a young man and a woman. The man was wearing brocade robes, and standing straight and tall, he cut an imposing figure. While the woman had cherry red lips and bright white teeth, her appearance beautiful and delicate. As they were standing by the gate, they were arguing something with Hell King Manor's butler. After the three had argued for a bit, rage was clearly visible on the young man's face, and suddenly raising his voice, he shouted, "Butler Nan, don't be mistaken. We are here by royal father's order to come and visit Hell King. It was an imperial edict. But now that the princess and I have personally come to visit, we're turned away at the gate. Who do you think we are? You're just a mere insignificant slave, yet you dare defy imperial decree." Hearing this, He was somewhat surprised. She hadn't expected that this man and woman would actually be Jinling Kingdom's prince and princess. But now, a kingdom's prince and princess visiting by imperial edict had unexpectedly been refused entry. It clearly showed that Nangong Yu's status in Jinling Kingdom is very high. He clicked her tongue and shook her head as she looked at the uncle blocking that man and woman's way. This uncle, known as Butler Nan, looked about 40 years old, and while he appeared refined and gentle, in reality, he was actually an expert gold core stage martial artist. He once heard Qing Long say that Butler Nan, apart from Nangong Yu's 8 bodyguards, was Master's most trusted confidant, and that all of the manor's internal affairs were handled by him. As Butler Nan was being questioned, his face was neither servile nor overbearing, and he laughed lightly. "Your Highness Third Prince is taking it too seriously. How can we defy an imperial decree? It's just that recently our prince hasn't been in good health, so it's inadvisable for him to meet guests. Please forgive me." The third prince knew that Butler Nan wasn't giving him any face, and he flushed in anger. Yet when he thought of Hell King's influence, he repressed his resentment and glared at Butler Nan with a dark look as he spoke. "You know what our identities are? What power we hold? We are here to visit Hell King, yet you all actually dare to refuse us." This third prince, Shengguan Rui, is the brother of the current crown prince and born of the same mother, the Empress. He's currently Jinling Kingdom's second prince, the son of the first wife, thus it is clear that his status is one that deserves respect. Throughout all of Yanjing City, whoever meets Shengguan Rui is respectful, and they try to curry favor with him. They all look upon him as the honorable prince, but only this place, Hell King Manor, it's the first time someone hasn't paid him any attention, not even letting him enter with his royal father's decree. Humph. Wait until royal brother becomes the emperor in the future, first thing he would do is eradicate Hell King Manor. The third prince's eyes flashed with cold killing intent, but a businesslike smile still stayed on Butler Nan's face, though a trace of disdain was hidden within his eyes. "That's correct. Master has ordered that without his permission no one is allowed to enter and disturb him. Third prince and princess, please forgive me." What he didn't say out loud was that let alone the prince and princess, even if the crown prince and the emperor himself were to come, he also wouldn't let them enter. As long as master doesn't want to meet with people or do things, then even the emperor would have to step down. At the third prince's side, his hands clenched into fists, and a cracking sound could be heard. Still, while he could restrain himself, the woman beside him was beyond angry and loudly shouted, "You're just a slave, a dog. I demand that you inform your master that Princess Xinyu has come, do you hear me? As long as brother Yu hears my name, I'm certain that he'll let me in." Chapter 173, Princess Xinyu. Butler Nan lightly laughed. "My apologies, princess, this subordinate has already announced your visit to master, but master's order is, that he still won't see you." "Impossible. How could brother Yu not want to see me?" Princess Xinyu was so angry her beautiful face turned red, her eyes full of rage. "This is definitely because of you, you old man. You didn't tell him clearly. Quickly go back in and announce my arrival once again." Disgust and contempt flashed in Butler Nan's eyes, yet on the surface he politely said, "Princess Xinyu, did you still not understand? Master's intention is that he doesn't want to see anyone for the next few days. It doesn't matter who it is, they still can't meet him. Of course, this also includes you and His Highness Third Prince." Princess Xinyu stared blankly in shock when she heard what Butler Nan said. Her long shapely eyebrows raised, and pointing her finger at Butler Nan, she cursed, "Wretched dog, who gave you the guts to speak back to us? Believe it or not, I'll report this to royal father when I get back, he'll cut your dog head off." Shengguan Jinyu is a princess born of the first wife, the Empress. Since childhood, she had always been arrogant and willful. She refused to learn any skills, remaining ignorant and incompetent. However, she liked to dance with swords. But still, she had no innate talent, so even though the emperor and empress found a lot of talent-enhancing treasures for her, they only helped her to barely advance to the middle of chi refining stage. Since she grew up worshipping strength, when she first saw Nan Gongyu in the gardens behind the imperial palace, she was startled. After that, she kicked up a fuss about wanting to be married into Hell King Manor. Unfortunately, there's no way Hell King would ever look upon such an idiot. Therefore, these past few years, this princess who was spoiled by the emperor had become the joke of everyone in Yanjing City. Butler Nan's face remained emotionless, completely devoid of anger or happiness. Only the clear contempt in his eyes gave away what he was feeling as he indifferently said, "Please do as you wish, princess." Princess Zhenyu pulled out the sword on her waist, and a swish could be heard. But just as she was about to rush forward and give this rude old man a lesson, she was stopped by the third prince. "Zhenyu, don't be rude." The third prince's complexion was also somewhat gloomy, but he understood Princess Zhenyu's temperament, and he was very clear on what the outcome would be if they went against Hell King Manor. Even though they were extremely angry, they had to endure it. Otherwise, it could hinder royal brother taking his position as the next emperor. The third prince turned his head towards Butler Nan, showing a tolerant and refined smile. "Zhenyu is still young, so she's not sensible, Butler Nan, please don't be bothered about her. We came on behalf of the emperor and the crown prince in order to visit His Highness Hell King, not to create a disturbance. Unfortunately, royal sister is impatient, and as a result she has offended Butler Nan. Please help us convey our goodwill to Hell King." Butler Nan slightly smiled as he nodded, "Of course. Princess is a treasure of this kingdom, how could this slave dare to hold a grudge against her?" Even though his words were humble, his speech and demeanor, however, were not the slightest bit respectful. Far from being servile, his countenance was one of haughtiness exclusively displayed by the people from Hell King Manor. As for the crowd watching this scene play out, they also felt that it was inevitable and to be expected. His Highness Hell King had alone managed to beat back the magical beast's army, so even if it's the prince and princess that came calling, so what? Without Hell King's protection, let alone Jinling's imperial family, all of Jinling Kingdom would have long been destroyed by the magical beast's troops. Heshi's heart lamented over Nan Gongyu's unique and unparalleled position in Jinling Kingdom. Then, slightly moving her feet, she unhurriedly walked towards Hell King Manor's gate. Butler Nan noticed Heshi approaching from the corner of his eye, and his formal smile instantly changed into one of enthusiasm and pleasant surprise. Quickly stepping forward, he started to say, "Prin," Heshi shot him a glare, and the intelligent Butler Nan promptly corrected himself, all while smiling, "Prince has already been waiting for a long time at the water pavilion. Young master, please follow me." Heshi nodded. Yet just as she went to follow him, she heard the somewhat gloomy voice of the third prince call out from behind her, "Hold on. Butler Nan, didn't you say that His Highness Hell King didn't want to meet with guests? Then why is this boy?" Chapter 174, Since when does who I am concern you? The third prince hadn't finished speaking, when he suddenly saw Heshi's appearance as she turned around. With his voice lodged in his throat, he completely stiffened in place. There's often an ancient description of a beautiful man that went, as bright as the sun and moon, like a lone pine standing on the edge of a cliff. With a graceful bearing, and refinement matching the most exquisite jade. At the time, the third prince would scoff when listening to these words, rejecting the thought of a man ever being compared with a delicate and beautiful woman. But now, seeing this youngster before his very eyes, he became stunned, like he lost his soul. If those ordinary and vulgar people from his residence were to be arranged in front of this youngster, the difference would be like a pearly white cloud compared to mud. The angry look on the third prince's face immediately vanished, his expression changing into one of a refined and warm spring wind. In his hand, a fan suddenly appeared, his countenance confident and elegant. "This humble one is named Shengguan Rui. If I may ask, what is young master's name? Did you come here to visit Hell King?" Stunned by the youngster's peerless beauty, the crowd had momentarily forgotten how to breathe. But when they heard the third prince's question, they returned to their senses, their hearts full of doubt. A moment ago, when the third prince and Princess Shinyu had requested to meet with Hell King, Butler Nan's attitude towards them had been neither cold nor hot. Not only that, even when Princess Shinyu had drawn a sword against him, Butler Nan hadn't reacted in the slightest. Yet suddenly, towards a mere youngster, Butler Nan's attitude was like that of a completely different person. His face had always been refined and formal, but now a smile had lifted his cheeks enough to form wrinkles. In the end, who is this youngster? He saw the third prince's sudden dramatic change in behavior, his pretentious prick-like attitude making her teeth ache. Without paying any attention to him, she turned around to leave. Butler Nan's eyes were cold as he glared at the third prince. This is the princess that Master fancied, their Hell King Manor's future madam, whoever it is that dares to covet her would be damned. Stop! At this moment, Princess Shinyu, who had been stunned by Heshi's appearance, sobered, and walking forward 3 steps, she blocked Heshi's path and arrogantly asked, "My third royal brother asked you a question, didn't you hear him? Who are you? Why can you enter Hell King Manor?" Although this juvenile was handsome, when compared to Nan Gongyu's appearance, although he wasn't inferior in any aspects, Princess Shinyu's heart wasn't swayed. Instead, indescribable loathing and jealousy were all she felt. Heshi sneered, lazily glancing at Princess Shinyu from the corner of her eye, "Since when does who I am concern you? Brazen. Do you know who I am?" Shinyu pointed at Heshi's nose as she cursed, "How dare you talk to me like that? Believe me, I will get people to..." Heshi slapped the finger away that was being pointed at her nose, laughing coldly, "Oh, really pitiful, she's even forgotten who she is. If anyone present knows who she is, they better hurry up and do a good deed by informing her. If the mind isn't stable, then you should avoid leaving home and being a public disgrace. Go back and remember to tell the doctor to give her brain medicine. You dare." Shin Yu's complexion turned purple with her anger, her body trembling. Everyone watching heard what was said and couldn't help but laugh. However, they didn't dare be too impudent and restrained their amusement due to her status as a princess. As a result to restraining their laughter, their expressions distorted and their bodies violently trembled. Ordinary people were afraid of Princess Shin Yu's status, but the guards of Hell King Manor and Butler Nan were nowhere near afraid of her status. So without restraint, the corner of their mouths turned up, and although they didn't make a sound, their eyes clearly showed their ridicule. Chapter 175, The Mysterious Young Master. Before Princess Shinyu lost all rational, the third prince couldn't bear it anymore and stepped forward. Then, with a calm and collected face, he asked, "Butler Nan, what's the meaning of this? Didn't you say that Hell King wasn't allowing anyone to visit? But why is this young master able to? Don't tell me you think our royal face is something that you can trample on as you wish?" Although this youngster's beauty accelerated the third prince's heartbeat, the attitude of Hell King Manor really infuriated him. Moreover, when he used his divine senses to examine this youngster's cultivation base, he discovered that he was only at chi refining stage. Even if this youngster had some sort of background, how could he compare to him and Jinyu? Hell King Manor unexpectedly fawns on such a low-level martial artist, yet they would lock their door and refuse to see them. Looking down on imperial power like this was the last straw. Thanks to Dandan's help, Heshi had currently set her cultivation base at chi refining stage in case people were to examine her. The reason is very simple. In the future, when she used her spiritual power in front of acquaintances, her lack of a cultivation base would attract suspicion. And since the advancing speed of her actual cultivation base would shock people, she had decided that chi refining stage would be good for the moment. Having heard what was said, Butler Nan's face didn't change as he replied, "Third prince likes to joke. Master has said that young master she is equal to the people of Hell King Manor, and that at any time he wishes, he is able to freely enter and leave Hell King Manor. He is not in the category of visitor. If third prince doesn't have any other matters, please allow this old slave and young master she to be excused." Finished speaking, and without looking at the third prince and Princess Shinyu's complexions, Butler Nan and Heshi quickly entered Hell King Manor. And after Butler Nan and Heshi entered, the gate closed immediately. The bodyguards guarding outside the entrance displaying a cold look to indicate for people to stay away, completely ignoring the prince and princess. Shangguan Jinyu firmly shook off third Prince Shangguan Rui's hand, furiously saying, "Third brother, why did you stop me?" Clearly that old slave was deliberately making things difficult for us and not letting us in. On top of that there's that unknown boy, he actually dared to ridicule me in public. Wait until we return to the Imperial Palace, I'll send people to properly teach him a lesson. Jinyu, enough. Shangguan Rui coldly cut her off. Then with a calm face, he turned around and walked over to the waiting carriage. Shangguan Jinyu had an undisciplined temper, but in fact, she was actually completely foolish, unaware of how high the sky reaches and how deep the ground lays. Hell King Manor considers everyone beneath their notice, and yet the Shangguan family hadn't dared to make a move against them. Why? Because Hell King Manor held a huge amount of power and influence, so if they wanted to, they could pull down the Shangguan family and take over as the emperor. In Mi Luo continent, it was the strong who were respected, and the weak who were prey to the strong. In this country it wasn't necessarily the emperor who held the most authority, it was usually a very large sect. Especially those old martial artist fanatics that reached nascent soul stage or higher, they only needed to move a finger and they would be able to move mountains and drain seas. Forget ordinary armies, whole households could be destroyed. So why would they defy the strong? So even if he was unwilling, the third prince didn't dare be rash towards Hell King Manor. And it wasn't just him that didn't dare, no one had the courage to go against Hell King Manor, not even royal brother and royal father. At this moment, Shangguan Rui's mind was occupied with remembering that beautiful youngster. Young Master Shi. Since when has there been a young Master Shi in Yanjing City? How come he didn't know about him? However, no matter what this person's status was, his and Hell King's relationship certainly wouldn't be simple. If he was able to entice young Master Shi, or even control him, then wouldn't he be able to learn some of Hell King's secrets? You're tuning in to the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.